My father's entitled psycho girlfriend completely cuts off the family after my father has a serious medical emergency, forcing him to be in the hospital for a week, while also leaving all of us in the dark. And after navigating this entitled Karen for so many years, me and the rest of this family are fed up with this woman. And right now, we're honestly not sure what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my dad has this longtime girlfriend who I will call Big Peach. And trust me, this is the biggest Karen you will ever meet in your life. She's got a fake tan, she's got pink hair, and she has the general resemblance to a giant peach. She is absolutely awful. My siblings and I hate her, and frankly, the feeling is definitely mutual. She lies, manipulates, and boundary stomps, all while trying to keep up this fake too sweet act where she would say, "Oh, I'm not trying to be a bother." And trust me, this is a very long situation and story. So anyway, 6 years in, and she's still pulling her stunts and getting away with it. But I've come to accept that dad is happy for some reason, and I have found ways to see him without her. But this particular series of events was way too much. I'm honestly fed up, and this is the last straw for me and my sisters. Now, for a bit more context, my dad was helping a friend do some work on a roof, and he actually fell. The scaffolding broke underneath him, and he fell 2 stories. An ambulance was called, and the friend went with him to the hospital. For some reason, the first person he called was Big Peach. She's been trouble ever since then. He apparently feels awful both for the accident and the drama our family is still experiencing. We didn't have much information for the first couple of days, since Big Peach kept as much from us as she could. She only contacted my younger sister about what happened, completely downplaying everything. My sister explained that Big Peach had told her that dad had broken his shoulder after a fall, but it wasn't serious, that there was nothing that we could do, and that we shouldn't even bother coming to the hospital as she has his phone, so don't bother calling him, and to tell me that he won't be home anytime soon. And for reference, I live with him, but my sisters do not. And my little sister was really alarmed at that last point. She kept messaging about when will dad get his phone back, and for the number to the ward that my dad was staying in at the hospital, but Big Peach refused to give her any of that information. She kept telling her he's fine, he'll be home by Monday. My little sister had to make a WhatsApp group with me and my middle sister just so all of us could try and get something out of her. Well, Big Peach couldn't keep it up in front of a crowd and eventually gave the name of the hospital and what ward he was in. And oh yeah, he's probably getting emergency surgery because he broke a bit more than just his shoulder. He went up on Saturday and we only got this information on Monday. So basically, if we weren't panicking before, we most definitely were now. We arranged for the 3 of us to go up on Tuesday to see him, all while Big Peach kept messaging us, trying to say how many of us can see him, trying to control when we're going, because she's going at this certain time so we can't go then. And again, all with the lies. She insisted she tried calling my little sister on Saturday night, but my sister has no missed calls from that time. She apparently tried coming to the house the same night to get some things, but I had the door bolted so she couldn't get in. And being the saint that she is, Big Peach didn't want to wake me up. It was bolted, it's something that I always do before bed when I'm home alone, except I was awake for most of the night with worry, and I never heard a car or anything from the door, and my bedroom is opposite the front door. Also, the dog goes bananas when she hears cars outside, you know, just like dogs do, and she was quiet all night, but Big Peach was totally there apparently. But then there was my grandparents. I called them to see how they were before we left on Tuesday, and guess what? No one had told them. Big Peach had gone in person that morning to tell them, all tears and needing them to comfort her. She told us on Saturday that Grandma and Grandpa knew and weren't going to bother coming up because he only broke his shoulder, so we shouldn't bother coming up either. And again, this is all just total lies. Anyways, I found this out on the phone with them on Tuesday, and naturally they're pissed off, and they're on their way up there at the same time as us since they only just found out about it. My grandfather explained that he had actually called Big Peach on Saturday, just a casual call, asking how things were, what they're up to, etc. And she told him that they were at home watching TV. She told him that she didn't want to worry them, that they deserve to be told in person because isn't she so good like that? And she gave the impression that we already knew what was going on. They were angry that none of us thought to tell them, but I explained that Big Peach told us they did know, and that we only found out about the full story the night before after her insisting on us not coming up to visit him. So I said we'd meet them at the hospital and share everything we knew so far. We got to the hospital and see Dad is way more upbeat than we imagined. His head's cut up and he has a black eye, and he could barely move through the pain that he was in. No exaggeration, he looked dead when we walked in. I brought a bag of things for him from home, and my sisters brought food and drink, but all of it was useless to him in that state. He couldn't read books, he couldn't eat, he could barely drink on his own. It was seriously scary to see. And he's fallen off roofs and hurt himself before, but he's never been left like this. The responders and the friend he was helping thought that he was dead after the fall, or was going to die in the ambulance because he was unconscious for ages. When we finally got talking to him, he told us the story and we realized how little he knew of what was going on. He just knew he was in the hospital and had to get surgery to fix him. He also didn't know that Big Peach had his phone, and that fact seemed to really alarm him actually. He didn't know his family was left in the dark until that morning. He wasn't even sure why Big Peach was handling everything. He has me as his emergency contact, not her, and that fact is what made us all even more on edge. When my grandparents arrived, they had time to cool down and just wanted to see my dad. Now, there was a rule for how many visitors could be by the bed, so I swapped with my grandmother since she was most anxious to talk to him. In the hallway, my grandfather begged me not to be angry with Big Peach. He says that while she had been very stupid this entire time, she does make my dad happy, and to please just let it go for his sake. He and my grandmother hold no love for her either, but they still try for the sake of peace. Now, I made no promises and even told him that I can't forgive her for this, but I would try to not start fights with her because there's enough going on already. It was a quiet visit all in all. Well, that visit was anyways, because anytime one of us tried to visit after that, no matter the time of day, Big Peach was there. And you know what? She was pissed at the fact that someone other than her was visiting him in the hospital. We got the impression that she was trying to be the loving, doting girlfriend, but didn't like the fact that there are other loved ones that were ready and willing to help out too. Like it somehow ruined her fantasy. She wanted to be the one to help him out and nobody else. My middle sister hypothesized some form of Munchausen syndrome. She's lied about studying to be a nurse for years, and a couple of years back, she did the same thing to her mother when she needed aid after she got her hip replaced. But that didn't last a week though. Big Peach got fed up with the fact that the poor woman needed food brought to her in bed, needed help getting to the toilet, you know, things that someone who's struggling to stand or walk would need help with. So she eventually sent her mother off to live with her sister because apparently she couldn't stand being treated like a servant. So I'm honestly not sure what she was expecting. For bells to ring and for her to get wings, for crowds to sing her praises, and for her to be declared a saint above saints. Now, I don't agree with the Munchausen syndrome idea, but I do agree that all this nonsense is all about attention. Now, I just want to say thank God for the nurses. They took great care of my dad for us, and I'm very grateful for them. I brought them boxes of cookies the last couple of times I was able to visit, and I don't know if it was appropriate, but they seemed very thankful. Now, the last I visited before my dad came home, Big Peach tried to cause drama with them too. I got there a bit before visiting time, but the nurses were happy to let me see my dad since I was alone, and I was there for I think half an hour before Big Peach showed up. I had braced myself to endure her for the full visit, but after 5 minutes, she announced that she needed the toilet and then walked off. She was back after maybe a minute, saying that she couldn't find it, and a few seconds later, a very tired nurse comes over and asks me to put on a mask or leave. And sure, I wasn't wearing one, but guess what? Neither was anybody else. Not the other visitors and not the nurses. Only Big Peach was wearing one. And of course, I apologized and I was happy to put the one on that I kept in my handbag, but even Dad commented on how weird it was that they only asked me after I had already been there for a while. Well, Big Peach said nothing and just stared at me. My dad didn't catch on, but it was obvious that she had excused herself to complain to the nurse about my bare face. And it's honestly like, okay, screw you, lady. While my dad was in the hospital, my sisters and I spent all week cleaning the house, as well as his room, and just getting ready for him to come home. I even replaced the broken toilet seat and fixed the damaged wall in the bathroom. My middle sister actually went all out and got new bed sheets and pillows and a duvet because the old ones were filthy beyond help. My middle sister also kept raging at the amount of pink hair she was cleaning up because, of course, Big Peach sheds worse than any animal we've ever owned. It is seriously disgusting. I pointed out that this is what I'm constantly dealing with, but no one ever believes me. The worst part of that is that she doesn't even live with us. This is just the result of her staying weekends. Dad actually came home way earlier than we expected. He's miles better than he was the week before, but still not well enough to be home. The friend who was with him when he fell was supposed to drive him since he has a Jeep with loads of space for him to be comfortable. And that would have happened except Big Peach got involved. If I had to guess, she probably had a childish temper tantrum. She stomped her foot and probably said, "No, I'm driving him. He's my boyfriend. I don't care what you say." And of course, I can only speculate, but that's what I imagine would probably have happened. Big Peach walked straight up to the door and went for the spare key, even though I know she saw me through the window. Well, I opened the door for her, thinking that she must be here for a change of clothing for my dad, but she storms in and says, "Oh, he's coming in the back," and then nothing else. Now, I didn't know what she was talking about, so I just let her fight the two back doors. And for reference, they are impossible to open unless you've lived with them. Eventually, she gets them unlocked and I prop them open after she storms back outside. She then got my half-dressed dad in and threw him in one of the chairs in the kitchen while I was putting the bin out since I was outside anyways. I was alarmed when I saw him and he was obviously in a lot of pain again, more than what we saw in the hospital. I didn't know he was coming home, but I was glad the house was ready for him. But clearly, Big Peach was not. Fortunately, all Dad wanted was a decent cup of coffee after a week of hospital food, and I happily obliged as I sat with him. Meanwhile, Big Peach was stomping about the house, trying to find things that are wrong and getting more annoyed that nothing is. At this point, she's bringing bags into the house, and she's doing this through the front door for some reason, even though she's parked by the back. Now, for a bit of context, we have a rule where we basically say keep the doors closed or keep the dog closed in a room because we are next to a very busy road. Well, Big Peach has ignored this rule in the past and only stopped after I said I would hold her head under the wheel of a bus if something happened to my dog, all because she was too stupid and lazy. Well, she apparently forgot this rule while bringing stuff into the house, so I had to rush to close the dog in before she got out. Now, I thought that this was the stuff that Dad had in the hospital, and maybe like his medications or something like that, but there were so many bags. But then I realized she is literally moving herself in. All those shopping bags were filled with her stuff and little to nothing of Dad's. Dad has not even given her a key to the house, and he looked utterly miserable at the sight of her carrying all that stuff in. He definitely wants her to go home, and she's clearly doing whatever the heck she wants. Since Dad was settled in the kitchen and wanted to wait before trying to go to bed, he asked me to turn the kitchen TV on so that he could see it, and then to leave him with the remote because he didn't feel like talking. I then instructed Big Peach in a very serious way to leave Dad where he is and to call me when he was ready to go upstairs. I then retreated to my room and updated my sisters on the situation. Well, after about an hour, I heard them at the stairs, which are outside my bedroom door. I went out and lo and behold, Big Peach is trying to drag my dad and his crutches up the stairs. I didn't try to help right away since the staircase is narrow, and that could cause a more dangerous situation, but I did watch them closely, and I was there for starters to jump in if they needed help, and secondly, I trust Big Peach about as far as I can throw her off a cliff. And you know what? I'm glad I was watching. My dad was struggling up the stairs, all while Big Peach was grabbing the back of his shirt and pulling him backwards. Even I know this is not how you help someone up the stairs. My grandmother, so my mom's mom, lived with us for a wee bit before she passed away, and all of us learned that you hold their arm gently and you put your hand on their back and support them as best you can. Even though honestly, I think this should be obvious. The original plan my sisters and I had was to get my dad upstairs to bed and give him some more time to heal before trying to get him back downstairs. His room has an in-suite, and we plan to use the upstairs hallway to get his exercises and crutch practice done. The idea was to minimize stress and pain for Dad. I even got a little kettle for his room so he could have coffee without anyone having to go downstairs. Well, Big Peach didn't agree to any of this. She forced Dad to go up and down the stairs every day when she wanted and not when he was ready. The three of us tried to talk to them about it, but she insisted that it was good for him and that it's not nice to keep him upstairs. And you know what? My dad was too sore to disagree with her. And it's like, fine, I couldn't stop them, but I made sure that I watched them every single time. I felt sick and a little frightened. Maybe I've watched one too many scary documentaries, but I didn't want to leave them alone in the house. And honestly, this ended up probably saving my dad's life. On the third night, she was helping him upstairs, and he lost his balance and started to fall backwards because, as I said, she was pulling on the back of his shirt. I rushed up the stairs as soon as I saw him start to wobble, and I caught him just in time. Adrenaline must have been going through me because my dad is a lot bigger than me, and I still managed to get him back upright. Well, Big Peach was staring at us with wide eyes and slack jaw. I then elbowed her out of the way, and I safely got my dad back up the rest of the stairs and into bed, after which I did lecture her on how dangerous what she was doing really is, and what the correct, comfortable, and most importantly safe way to help someone up the stairs really is. I wasn't trying to be mean or nasty to her, but that was an extremely scary thing to see, and I never wanted that to happen again, which probably affected my tone. Now, to be fair to Big Peach, she was trying up to that point. I had only started a new job 2 weeks before, and I couldn't take time off to help. She vacuumed the floor, she did the dishes, and she made meals. But mostly, she sat and watched TV, but at least she did something. The meals she made were frozen meals that were hot on the outside, yet still cold on the inside. And while I'm not sure how she did that, I am still grateful and always made sure to thank her when she made dinner for me. Well, with all that being said, after the incident on the stairs, however, she stopped altogether, and instead, she just watched TV all day. I started helping Dad up and down the stairs because he did want to be in his favorite chair in the kitchen rather than in bed. I made dinner for everyone after work in the evenings. I made Dad coffee and lunch while cleaning the house on my days off, and my middle sister works basically across the road from the house, so she could check on him while I was at work during the day, with my younger sister coming on her days off and would do what she could. But what about Big Peach, you might be asking? Well, nothing. She watched TV all day and didn't speak a word to anyone. I came home from work once and Dad immediately begged me to take him upstairs to the toilet. He's been desperate to go number one for a couple of hours, but apparently Big Peach couldn't hear him over the TV in the living room, which by the way is next door to the kitchen. There were then 3 more days of this before she packed up her things and went home. And this is because apparently we were all so ungrateful to her, and the fact that she took time off to help us out, even though no one asked her to do anything. And seriously, apart from the stairs thing, she was actually being helpful in other ways like the cooking and cleaning. I never forbade her from doing anything when I talked to her about the stair thing, but she acted like I did in some kind of way. I didn't even say that she couldn't help Dad up the stairs, just that she had to do it the right way so that he wouldn't fall. I never said a thing when she didn't tell us about Dad going to the hospital, when she tried to keep us from visiting, when she told us so many lies to a lot of people, when she kept his phone so we wouldn't contact him, when she checked him out early so she could be the one to drive him home, when she moved herself in and took over the house. I mean, seriously, I never said a word to her because everyone, including my dad, had begged me and my sisters not to. And I did that to keep the peace and let her have her way because too much was going on already. But one talking about stair safety was out of line and just made her storm out? Like, are you kidding me right now? So my sisters and I took on more to make meals and get Dad to the toilet while also keeping the house in order, which by the way was the plan from the start. But with Big Peach's interference, we had to scramble to rearrange our schedules with work and back with our partners, all to what we had planned before, all on very short notice. So basically, it really was not fun. Big Peach also stayed away for about 2 weeks before going back to her routine of coming over for the weekends just so she can get some takeaway. She was icy to my dad and did not acknowledge me at all, which honestly suits me just fine, but Dad didn't like it. My grandma and grandfather visited when they could, but Grandma's health isn't great either, and they can't leave the house as often anymore. Dad's recovery was slow and painful. The painkillers did very little for him. He actually had to change doctors, get different medication, and try physiotherapy before anything really worked for him. All the while, Big Peach was giving him grief for how she was treated, and I seriously just cannot comprehend this woman at all. Even a year later, I keep thinking about what if he had passed away? How long would Big Peach have kept us in the dark? How much would she have tried to hijack and control then? It honestly really scares me. Now, I wrote most of this while most of it was still happening, but life got in the way. I never ended up posting anything online, but I've decided to post this now because guess what? It happened again last week. My dad had an accident in work which gave him a concussion. And again, some idiot from his work went to his phone and called his girlfriend instead of getting the information for his emergency contact that he has listed, which by the way, that person is me. He was unconscious for a few minutes, but they still sent him to the hospital after he came around. I honestly don't know what happened there because Big Peach at some point convinced him to message me saying that he was working late. And this is all in some effort so that I don't get worried apparently. But also this time there was not a word sent to any of my sisters. Now Dad sometimes works late when they have a big project going on, so I honestly didn't even question it that night. The next morning, Dad and me got up at the same time and there was no Big Peach anywhere. I asked how work was the day before since he had got home after I went to bed, and that's when he told me that he was in the hospital with a concussion. This caught me completely off guard and I freaked out when he briefly tells me what happened. And then he decides to tell me that he's going on holiday with Big Peach after the weekend. I told him he can't fly with a concussion, but he insists that he's going because he's already booked it and Big Peach will be angry if he cancels it. I argued with him all week on it, but I did drop it after a scan of the hospital told him that he was all good. I had to not give him a choice on letting me take him to the hospital, Big Peach or no Big Peach. He has promised me that he'll keep me updated on what he's doing and that if he doesn't feel well, he says that it's okay because he'll have Big Peach with him to look after him. And I guess the concussion made him forget the last time Big Peach actually looked after him. So as of right now, yeah, they're away. I at least have a quiet house for the week, and I'm still paranoid about my idiot dad and his selfish, idiotic girlfriend. Her general awfulness and my dad's stubbornness about staying with her has broken this family more than it already has. My sisters barely talk to Dad anymore. Big Peach is not welcome at either of their homes. The rest of the family has completely cut contact with him, and my grandparents and I are exhausted with the constant drama with them. And undoubtedly, there is more drama and the worst drama to come, because one of my sisters just got engaged, and Big Peach is already trying to hijack the entire thing. But I'm honestly so sick of Big Peach, and I seriously do not want to deal with her any longer. Wow, this is a heck of a story, like seriously. First of all, Big Peach is a hilarious name, because the entire time I was reading through this, I was like, wow, that really gives a serious visual. But also, my God, why is your dad staying with this lady? She sounds like a nightmare, a living, walking nightmare who is tearing this family apart. It is seriously so disturbing the way she handled both of these hospital visits. The first one was clearly way worse than the second one, but seriously, both times she just completely left the family in the dark. And you're right, you literally hit the nail on the head. What if your dad passed away? What if he died and nobody knew about it? Like, how long would that go on? Would she have a funeral and then tell you after the fact? I can't stand dealing with toxic partners of my family members who seriously feel it's their job to control the narrative of what is and isn't happening with someone's health. I know I've got a few of those in my family, and hopefully you don't, because seriously, it is a nightmare. It's like dealing with Big Peach all the time and you can never get rid of them. And that's especially true when you're related to them. Like, that's a whole different can of worms. But the way Big Peach acted, in my opinion, is like the ultimate form of entitlement that seriously is so weird. She's taking a tragedy and trying to latch herself onto it in some kind of way so that she's the one that can control the flow of information. And that is a massive red flag. Like, how does your dad not see that this lady is not a good person? She did nothing to help out in the hospital. She was actively antagonistic towards his daughters. And when your dad's finally home, she's doing nothing to help out. Like, literally nothing. Like, she basically tried to push him down the stairs every time she supposedly helped him up the stairs. Like, this is so weird. So truly, to the original poster, I am so sorry you have to deal with Big Peach. She sounds like a piece of garbage, and she really does sound like a narcissist. Not to mention the fact that she is super entitled and just begging for attention. And the fact that she tried to use your dad's medical emergencies as a way of gaining that attention, that in my opinion is so messed up, and you guys absolutely did not deserve that. An entitled worker calls the police on me for wanting to report a theft. A few years ago, before the pandemic, my fiance and I went out of town to attend an event and booked a hotel room for the week. We went through one of those booking sites and actually got booked in a handicap room and charged extra for it. We immediately went to the manager, who informed us that the room was supposed to be unavailable due to somebody passing away about a week ago in that same room. They immediately moved us to another room while giving me her business card and a receipt saying that we would be getting $100 off our stay due to everything that happened. I saved everything in my wallet and we continued with our stay. The day before we left, I ended up severely heat sick and ended up passing out for a few hours. When I woke up, the front door was wide open. The contents of my purse had been strung out everywhere. I panicked and ran towards the door, coming face to face with my fiance, who was concerned. He said that he had gone to get dinner for the two of us and thought that I would be out for a few more hours, so he brought some pain relief and cold drinks to help me feel better. He was upset because he had seen someone leave our room and thought that I had let someone in until I explained that I had just barely gotten up myself. We ended up fighting for a little bit, especially since he didn't believe me until I showed him my purse, which was spilled all over the room. By that point, he felt bad and helped me clean up, and we called the manager to report what happened. Outside of the $50 I keep in my purse, the only thing missing was the receipt from the manager that explained that we got $100 off of our stay at checkout. I explained this to the manager, and she said that she had to put a note in the account and would be in the office the following morning at 8 o'clock, which is when we needed to leave to go meet up with family when we got home. My fiance and I were both scared and didn't really sleep that night. When I got up the following morning, we went down to the office at exactly 8 o'clock to check out and found an entitled young employee standing at the desk. This kid was probably a freshman in college, if not in high school. And as soon as I wanted to check out, this kid started acting like an entitled brat. He says, "What do you want?" I politely asked for the manager by name, and then he said, "Well, they're not here. What do you want?" I was confused why this kid was acting the way he was, but I also wanted to get checked out. So I asked him, "Do you know when she'll be back?" He says, "Probably in a few hours. Now either get out or tell me what you want." At this point, I went outside and told my fiance everything. He said that since we should have had the note on our room stating that we got $100 at checkout, I should just proceed to check out despite how annoying this kid was. So I went back in and he had an even worse attitude. "What do you want?" I said, I want to check out, please." The kid rolled his eyes at me, which was already setting me off, and says, "What room?" I proceed with checkout, but the kid was acting pretty weird. He asked me about the note on my account stating I was to be refunded $100, and I made the mistake of mentioning the break-in the day before, and how $50 more was taken out of my purse, and about how the note from the manager was also stolen. The kid immediately grew defensive and stated that despite what the manager said, that $100 was going towards paying for damages, and that I owed even more upfront with the cash for the damages. For context, the original room we were given had a sink that fell out of the wall. The manager even mentioned that it was not our fault, and that's why they gave us another room, aside from the person who had passed away in that room earlier. I don't know about you, but this struck me as really odd. So I told him that I wanted to talk to the manager, who had been my primary contact through all of this. He got mad and started yelling at me to either pay up or get out, or just leave and forget about it. I decided to go with the second option and sat down in the front lobby while my fiance finished loading up the car. That's when I remembered that I had the manager's card with her phone number in case of an emergency. I started to dial the number for the manager when the kid came out and started screaming at me to give him the card and to just leave. His odd behavior had me even more confused, as he was actively trying to take this card from my hand while screaming in my face. When I didn't give him the card, he screamed that he was calling the police and stormed off like a toddler. My fiance caught the tail end of the conversation and brought it to my attention that we were late enough, so we got in the vehicle and left, passing the manager as she pulled into the parking lot as we left. I got a call within a few minutes and I explained to her everything that happened. She thought it was weird as well, but the conversation got cut off when she announced that the police had arrived, along with a small gathering of people. She promised she would call me back and hung up the phone. When she called back, I was shocked. As it turned out, the kid never called the cops, but one of the other guests did. Apparently, their room, along with several other rooms, had been broken into the day before and earlier that morning. Someone's vehicle was even stolen as a result, and everyone who had gathered around had called the police to report it. What made it even worse was the fact that while the kid was yelling at people the same way he was yelling at me, a pair of keys fell out of his pocket and were automatically identified as the missing keys of other guests. It turns out this kid was working with a bunch of his friends to try and steal from guests and sell their stuff to get money for anything they could. When the cops and the manager confronted the kid about it, he pitched a fit and tried to play innocent and told the cops to arrest the guests gathering for harassing him. In the end, the kid was arrested, and the guests were pressing charges. I was asked if I wanted to press charges as well, but I told her no and just stated that I wanted everything cleared up with a check made out to me. I got the money back, and I got a call a few weeks later about how the kid at the front desk wanted to press charges on me and had come to the hotel demanding my contact information, but nothing happened from there. I still couldn't believe the fact that some kid turned into a total Karen when he almost got discovered as a complete thief. This story went from like 1 to 100. This went in a direction I did not expect. The kid at the front desk was the one that stole everything from these people, and he ended up getting arrested and charged with theft at the end of it. I mean, that's crazy overall. It begs the question of how long this kid's been doing this. If there's one thing I learned from customer service or anything even close to that, the angrier somebody is and the more frustrated they are, the more of a clue it is that they might be doing something nefarious, both on the customer side as well as the employee side. It's not always the case, so don't get me wrong here, but the way this kid was acting, where he was getting up in this lady's face, screaming at her because he wanted to get the manager's phone number away from her, and then just acting incredibly unprofessional to a degree that is completely inappropriate, was such a telling sign that something was wrong. And I can't believe that the original poster didn't want to press charges. That is crazy to me. That would have been the first thing I did against this kid. There's no way I would let him get away with that. I'm really glad they got their money back, and I'm really glad that things got worked out. But if there is a lesson learned, you just gotta be careful when you go to a hotel, because you never know who could try and break in and steal your stuff. Am I the jerk for ghosting my dad and completely blocking him out of my life for 7 years? My relationship with my dad has always been rocky. My dad and my mom split up when I was 9 years old, and she had custody of my brother and I most of the time. I won't get into the family dynamics, but almost 7 years ago, I cut my dad out of my life. We had a really bad relationship, and it was severely impacting my ability to function, especially with having him in my life at that time in the way that he was. In retrospect, he and I both had things to work on, but we honestly wouldn't be able to do that without some kind of space between us. A few years after that, my little brother left the house when he was 14 to go live with him. I didn't keep in contact with him after that. 3 years ago in December, I pulled into the parking lot of a theater. I was going to see one of the new Star Wars movies that had just come out. I decided to call my dad randomly after realizing that there wasn't going to be the right time to resume communication with him. I mean, it has been 7 years. I mean, come on. I didn't even know if he wanted to hear from me after all that time. Well, he did pick up, and we had a great conversation for maybe 20 minutes before agreeing to get coffee on the week of Christmas. I was happy. I was going to start building a relationship back up with him, and it seemed from that phone call that we found ourselves in a better place than we were at when we parted. 4 days later, I texted him thanking him for letting me talk to him and letting him know that I'll text him again to set up a time and a place for coffee. I got absolutely no reply. The day after that, I asked if we were still on for coffee, and I throw out a place and a time to ask if that works for him, and still no reply. A day after that, I tried calling him and got no response. So I figured that he had put on a smiling face to talk to me during our phone call the week before, but that he wasn't over the fact that I had cut him off all those years ago. Thinking I had been given the cold shoulder, the last text I sent him that year was on Christmas Day, and it read, "Merry Christmas, Dad. Maybe we'll talk again someday. Until then, live well." This affected me more than I was willing to admit to myself for the next year. I smoked more to deal with the stress and would break down rarely, and I didn't handle it in a healthy way at all. Fast forward to December of 2020, almost a year since the last text I sent him. I sent him another text telling him that I hoped he, my brother, and any loved ones that were with him were in good health and that they were happy. Then in April 2021, I sent him a long text letting him know that I knew he probably didn't want to hear from me, but I wanted to talk to him again and telling him that I missed him. Yesterday, I tried calling him again. Nothing. Then I sent him a link to my live stream of my college graduation happening in 6 days and told him that I loved him. Still nothing, but I had grown to expect this by now. Then I had the bright idea of checking his contact page on my phone to see if I had the wrong number or if something weird had been happening that made my text not get to him. I had forgotten that I blocked his number when I was 16, which came back to me when I saw it on my contact page. I was in shock. I undid the block and texted him asking if he could see my texts, and I got the first communication from my dad that I had seen in years. We just got off FaceTime where we had an awesome conversation to reconnect. It turns out he could see my text the whole time, but thought I would ignore his replies. I told him what happened and he understood and forgave me without reservation. I felt so bad about my mistake and probably will for the rest of my life. We talked about our lives, and it made me realize that we were in fact both in a better place to have a dad and son relationship again. We have a long way to go, but I feel like I got my dad back today for the first time in a long time. This is a beautiful story overall, and it really touches my heart. I think this is wonderful evidence that you shouldn't be held hostage by your own mistakes that you made as a teenager. I totally understand where this kid was coming from. When he was a 16-year-old, he was troubled by his parents splitting up, and it probably messed with his head. I have friends who have gone through divorces where their parents have split up and it has absolutely devastated them. And you can probably go through some really intense emotions when that happens. So I really feel for the original poster in this situation. It must have been devastating to realize that he had blocked his dad without realizing it, and that although his texts were coming through, he couldn't see the responses that were coming to him. That is heartbreaking, but it is so comforting to know that they were able to work it out. He was able to unblock him and they're able to reconnect. I think sometimes people make mistakes and they act out in certain ways based on the given circumstances, but that doesn't mean you can't turn things around and make it better. And I'm really happy that both of these people were able to do that. My boyfriend is constantly discouraging me from marriage, and I don't know what to do. My boyfriend and I have been dating for almost 2 years now. I love him so much. I only see a future with him. He's the only person I've been with. I've never met his friends since he won't tell his friends about my age, and he says they're quite conservative and would look down upon that. For reference, my boyfriend's 35 and I'm a 20-year-old female. I told him that he could just lie about my age and say I'm older, but he won't. He told me at one point that once I hit my 20s, that he would be able to tell his friends about me and they wouldn't mind. I have met his siblings and they seem quite nice. Well, actually his younger brother dislikes me a lot and I don't know why, and he's trying to discourage my boyfriend from dating me. I have not met his parents yet, since he says if I met them, I'd have to get married tomorrow, and his parents don't really know much about me either, but they know how I look and they know how old I am, and they don't fully approve of me because of my age. He says that if I want, I can meet his parents tomorrow, but what happens after is what I will have to endure, as he won't be able to help me with any repercussions that may come our way. My parents are against us getting married or even being together, but I honestly want nothing more than to settle down with him and marry this man. He loves me a lot and cares for me as well. He says it's not possible for us to get married right now because of how busy I am with school, and he would only feel comfortable once I finish my undergrad. I only have 1 more year until I complete my undergrad, and then I'll be graduated from college. I'll be 21 by the time I I graduate, and I told him how it'll be possible then, but he still just doesn't say anything about it. He used to tell me so much about how he wanted to marry me, how he would call me wifey, but now he barely tells me that he loves me because he's so preoccupied with work and personal stuff. I want a ring. I want to be married, and I already work so I won't need him to support my life. He tells me sometimes if he could, he'd get married tomorrow, but due to my age and where I'm at in life, we just simply can't. He also knows that I don't date unless it's for marriage. I also don't want to waste my youth with him if it doesn't lead to marriage. So it begs the question, does he even want to marry me, or is he just passing time with me? He has said that he'll give me everything that I want eventually, but he hasn't committed, and I don't know what to do. What would you do if you were in this situation? So first off, you have been together with this person for 2 years and you haven't met his friends or family at all? It does not sound like he wants to marry you. It sounds like he probably just wants a young girlfriend. Like, this guy is 35 years old and he's fishing around with a 20-year-old, someone who is barely outside of their teenage years. It's just a super red flag kind of situation. Like, he was 33 years old when he met you, and it kind of seems like a grooming situation of a teenage girl. I get that you're in love, I get that you're really excited about this guy and you want to get married, but I really think you need to be careful and reassess if this is a healthy relationship. It honestly seems like he's just kind of stringing you along, and that is not good for anybody. And if he's doing that, then he really will waste your youth, and you'll never get what you want. My entitled aunt shames me for being fat and loveless at 17 years of age. I'm 17 years old, and I had a vacation at my mom's hometown weeks ago, and my entitled aunt was there. Fat shaming from relatives is nothing new to anyone in this country, but I wasn't in a good mental space, and I've been struggling with my insecurity regarding my body weight. I'm going to be 18 this year, and everyone expects me to start living healthy, so I started working out and eating little every day, but I don't feel good about it. I'm generally just unhappy. My entitled aunt started teasing me about my weight, constantly reminding me to work out and to eat only a little bit of food every day. It's just a super unhealthy thing to say to a teenager. You see, I don't have a very good relationship with her. We disagree on almost everything, especially on her bigoted political views. Also, she traumatized me by trying to set me up with her then sugar daddy's son. I was 10 and the boy was 13 years old. She's in a non-existent competition with my mom, and it's so bad to the point where she forced my cousin to take a college program he's struggling in because I'm going to take a good program. This decades-long competition badly affected us, so she started targeting me ever since I was a kid. The stuff I stated on the title isn't the only thing she did to me. I was posting on Facebook about the candidate I support for the presidential elections, who she really hates for absolutely no reason aside from that candidate not being hers. So she's spreading fake news about my candidate over Facebook. She made fun of me for acting like I know better than most adults, basically trying to smart shame me. And that is a very severe thing in my country, since corrupt people don't like it when someone is smart enough to call them out on their BS. She thinks it's unladylike that I'm being smart and that boys wouldn't like me. Apparently, I'm too fat, I'm too smart, and I wouldn't impress men. My entitled aunt kept repeating and laughing hysterically about my insecurities and my flaws. She said that when she was 17, boys were obsessed with her because she was skinny, pretty, and possessed just the right amount of brains to impress a man. To this, I laughed and told her, "Is that why you decided to get pregnant at 17? And I hit her right where it hurts. My mom was originally Grandpa's favorite, but because she dated a woman in her college years, my aunt became Grandpa's favorite. She disappointed him and ruined our grandparents' peaceful lives by sleeping with her boyfriend at that time and getting pregnant. All because she wanted to rub it in my mom's face that she has a boyfriend and that their parents approve of it. Overall, she is just a terrible person and I can't wait to be away from her." Yeah, this aunt sounds like a piece of work, fat shaming a 17-year-old and saying that she's too smart for her own good and that that's not going to impress men is just a disgusting thing to say overall. It plays into the stereotype that women have to be dumb and stupid just for men to even look their way, and that's just ridiculous. I think it's fine if she feels like she needs to get healthy and if she wants to lose weight because she feels like she's in a bad place, but to do it simply because people are bullying her or trying to shame her into doing it is not a good reason to do anything. The original poster, in my opinion, just needs to get away from this aunt and find people in her life that can show love, support, and genuine concern for her situation. My entitled mother decides suddenly that she just simply doesn't have to pay rent. This was about 20 20 years ago, in late 2000 or early 2001, my mom was one of those people who simply didn't understand that she had to pay for things. She was famous for running up huge phone or power bills, not paying them, and then getting mad at the company when they turned the service off. Her reasoning was that they should understand that she needs the phone or power or whatever. To her credit, I guess she did pay her rent, though she wasn't happy about it. Not in the way everyone is unhappy with paying their rent, but like she deeply resented it. She took it personally. One day, she learned about a legal concept of squatters' rights. That is a thing in California, and it means essentially if you live in an abandoned property and improve it for 5 years with no owner coming forward, you can claim ownership over it. What she thought this meant was that she could stop paying rent, become a squatter, and that she would have the right to stay where she's at and not have to go anywhere. Needless to say, her landlord completely disagreed. She did eventually give in and start paying her rent again after a couple of months, but needlessly to say, she didn't stay in that house much longer. I don't know if this person is just legitimately stupid or what, because if you're going to be renting from someone, you have to pay rent. Like nothing in life is free, something is going to cost money, time, energy, something. There's some exchange there that is to be expected. Like just imagine yourself if you own property and you're trying to rent it out and you have someone like this coming in and deciding, you know what, I'm not going to pay rent, I'm going to squat instead. What a disgusting, unhealthy thing to do. I understand people need to have rights, and I understand that those rights are probably there for a reason, but it just looks like it's a really weird opportunity to try and abuse the system and try and get away with having a property that you don't actually own. An entitled Karen tries to take my home, but ends up getting busted instead. About a year ago, my mother was going through difficult financial issues, so she decided to rent out one of the rooms of the house. She eventually rents the room out to a lady who we'll call Karen, with her 2 kids. For the first few days, everything is fine until I noticed that items from around the house were going missing. First, it was just some books or some coasters, but it slowly grew to us missing entire dish sets. My mom thought that the roommate was stealing from us, and so we set up a camera in the living room which could watch the main part of the house. On camera, we caught her stealing a pair of wine glasses that belonged to my great-grandmother, along with a new set of pans. She was also sneaking food from our fridge into her room and leaving her dirty dishes for us to clean. My mom was furious, but she didn't want to lose the rent that she gave, so my mom just let it go and let her stay. 1 week later, and it's rent day, and this lady doesn't have the rent, saying that she spent it all on a casino. My mom, being the nice person she is, forgives the Karen and forgives her of the month's rent. Fast forward a month and the same thing happened again, only this time we had found out she was selling her welfare cards and spending the money she earned from it at the casino and on cigarettes. My mom was ready to explode at this point and gave her a 2-week notice to move out. The Karen didn't like that, and she constantly berated me and my mom, saying stuff like,
"Why are you so mean and rude to people for doing this to me? Where would I go with 2 kids?"
We didn't care because at this point she had stolen from us, squatted in our home, and broke the door in a fit of anger at her kids. So eventually the 2 weeks go up and she's still here. So we give her another notice for 3 days and saying if she doesn't leave, we'll fine her $500 rent with an additional $200 in damages to our home. Karen, noticing this, calls the police and tells them that we have broken into her house and are threatening her. The police officer, whose kids I was friends with, completely shuts her down, knowing that me and my family have lived here for as long as he can remember. The officer tells her that if we have told her to leave and she doesn't, that we can then press charges and have her removed from the property in cuffs. It's at this point she starts to pipe down and swear that she'll leave in 3 days. But the very next day, she's back to harassing us. My brothers and I finally snap and begin to throw her stuff out the window by her car with the note of eviction. She yelled at us and almost hit my younger brother, but was stopped by my father, who had just pulled in after being at work across seas for the past few months. Perfect timing, if you ask me. She argues with him, claiming that we've been abusing her and her kids. And my dad, he being the smart person that he is, listened to what she had to say and then watched the camera footage we took of her stealing from us. After much arguing, she eventually eventually left, flipping us off in the car as she drove away, pretending to cry the entire time. We later found out she had made a post about us on Facebook, about how we had wrongfully removed her from our home without any kind of notice, and that we had stolen stuff from her. Needless to say, when she finally left, we were all really relieved and a little bit angry that we had to pay for damages ourselves after she refused to. What an absolute mess. This is a classic case of, oh, we didn't do our background check and we just let anybody in because we were desperate for money. Boy, was that not worth it. Imagine having someone like that under your house that you could not get rid of. No matter what you did, they still stuck around like a tick and just siphoned away at your life. What a horrible situation to be in. I cannot imagine having to deal with that woman. The fact that she was squatting in the house and then she was breaking and stealing stuff. I mean, these people were way too nice. They let her get away with so much stuff. It's unbelievable. Overall, though, I'm glad they got this Karen out of their house, and I'm glad that they can finally go back to normalcy. Am I the jerk for turning down a girl I went on a date with because I thought she was a part of a cult? So about a month ago, I went on a date with a girl who I met online. We had been texting for a couple of weeks, and the vibe was great, so we decided to go for dinner and a movie. We met at a restaurant, and we instantly hit it off. Everything was going great until she mentioned she was part of something called a cult farm. I had no idea what that was, so I just assumed it was some weird religious group. I'm not religious, and I don't have a problem with religious people, but I tend to avoid people in cults because of varying beliefs. So we finished dinner and went to the movies and had a nice time. The next day we were texting and I politely told her I didn't feel a romantic connection. So we said our goodbyes and that was that. That is until this morning when I randomly remembered what she said about the cult farm and decided to look it up to learn what it even was. So it turns out I'm an idiot because I realized she had been saying cult spelled C-O-L-T instead of C-U-L-T. She was referencing the horses, not some weird spiritual organization. So now I'm currently laughing at it and kicking myself for turning down a lovely person who I had an incredible time with. I tried to find her on social media and explain my mistake, but I can't find her anywhere. So at the end of the day, it's just my own mistake that I'm gonna have to live with. So what do you think? Am I the jerk? I mean, in all honesty, I think, yeah, you kind of are a jerk. You jumped to a conclusion that just wasn't even close to true. But that's not to say that I don't completely understand where you're coming from. Like, it really legitimately probably could have been some weird situation where it's like, hey, come join my cult farm. And you don't know what that is, and maybe you come along with it, and maybe it is exactly what you think it's going to be. But I'm sure if you went along and you found a bunch of horses and you're like, oh, a cult farm, it probably would have absolved any fear or doubts that you might have had. Overall, though, next time, maybe look a little bit further into what someone's talking about instead of jumping to some conclusion that they're going to try and make you drink some Kool-Aid. My mom thinks she's entitled to my new vehicle simply because hers is old. So I finally got a steady career after years of really terrible seasonal jobs and labor jobs that paid for the gas and got me to my job and then back home, and that's about it. First thing I wanted was a new pickup truck since I travel to work 3/4 of the year and pay a lump sum in rent when I'm home. Essentially $3,000 for 2 to 3 months, which is average rent. I spent 5 years carless because my sister wrecked my vehicle, but she got a new car while I suffered. I had to ride buses and walk to get where I needed to go. I hated it, but also it gave me time to think about how new of a vehicle I wanted. I never owned a new vehicle, so I decided that that was my plan and I was going to go and get something that I enjoyed. My mom, on the other hand, has never treated her cars nicely. She always runs low on oil, she never has a tank of gas, and she's always been a huge distrust when it comes to cars. My mom heard I was truck shopping, so she conspired with my cousin to find one for me. So my mom sent me a link to an overpriced, high-mileage, gas-guzzling truck that I absolutely did not want. I wanted something refined and new, not something old and gross. I told her that I don't need help shopping. She got angry and sent me more and more, and I noticed a theme. Many were trucks she looked at before but couldn't afford. She, on the other hand, only bought one vehicle in her life. Anything else she's ever gotten was from grandpa, basically including her current vehicle. So she sent me more lifted, overpriced garbage, and I spoke my opinion. I said to her, do I look like Guy Fieri with daddy issues? I am a Florida Georgia Line fan. Stop sending me this garbage. She then got mad and said, I'm just helping. I told her I don't need help and I know what I want. She got mad even more and said, you don't know anything about pickups, especially diesels. Also, as a side note, I work on diesel engines on a daily basis for work, but somehow I don't know anything about diesel trucks. Yeah, okay. So after a back and forth of telling her no, she then started sending me ads for stickers. And these were stickers to things that she liked and that she basically wanted me to get for her. I told her no again and she got mad, asking why I didn't want them. I informed her stickers are a thief magnet and additionally I hate them. She got mad and basically threw a temper tantrum. I then overheard her talking to my cousin about how they plan to sell my grandfather's car and keep mine. I don't trust either of them, so I bought a self-storage unit for my car instead. She asked for a copy of the key since I will be gone soon, and I laughed and said, haha, you are not getting that key. She got mad and said,
It'll sit there for half a year, and that's bad for the car.
I told her it's not going to happen, and I left it in storage. My cousin and my mother completely lost their minds, but at the end of the day, I knew what I wanted, and it was not to have them anywhere near my car. If they want a new car so bad, they can save up and get one for themselves. It sounds like the mom in this situation was super jealous that their son had a new car lined up and they just simply wanted to butt in and get their own. I mean, they're trying to send him all these links to these cars that they want that the son very clearly doesn't want, which is such a telling sign that they are clearly envious of what's going on. Good on him though for getting a storage unit to try and protect his new car, and I don't blame him for banning them from ever getting near it, because you know for a fact that they would have destroyed it. My wife says really hateful things about me to her friends behind my back, and I don't know what to do about it. A little backstory to begin with. About a year ago, we moved into a new city for a new job opportunity for me that puts us in a good position financially and as a family. This job is more stressful and demanding than my previous job, but I really enjoy what I do and have a lot of opportunities to learn and grow in my new position, much more than I did before. My wife works from home and has a lot of flexibility for her job, and we have 2 kids that are either in school or in daycare. We split the chores between us and the childcare as much as possible. However, I noticed that after we moved out, our fights haven't necessarily gotten more frequent, but they have increased in intensity, and we've had 2 big fights since we moved out. I also noticed that she started venting to her sister and friends more than usual after these fights, and some of the things I overheard her say seemed really hateful and more than just venting. Like it was stuff that was so bad that if I heard someone else saying these things about their significant other, I would heavily question whether they really still wanted to be with that person and asking if they really are so unhappy and hate their partner that much. We have always been able to work through our issues and find compromises through techniques we went through in therapy, or so I thought. Once things seem to work out, she acts like everything is normal and all is fine, but I end up keep hearing her vent about the same things again and again. When I bring it up, she reiterates that everything is fine and gets upset if I push further. Some of the things I hear really hurt, and the fact that she's saying these things to her sister and friends now makes me feel very awkward every time I'm around them, to the point I don't want to be around them anymore because I don't truly know what they know or feel. I'm a private person, so this really does bother me that she shares so much and paints me in such a negative light with almost every conversation she has with them about me. I'm at a loss on where to go from here and how to handle this situation. I'm currently looking into individual therapy in our new city, and I know it will help, but really, where do I go from here? I love her so much, and she and our kids are my world, and I feel like she is almost living a double life with what she's saying to her friends and how she acts with me. What do I do? It sounds like it's probably very hard to live with someone like that, where they're completely two-faced, they treat you one way in person, and then say all these terrible, nasty things behind your back to their friends or their sister. It sounds like he really does love her, but she doesn't love him, in all honesty. And it sucks that there's a kid between them, because this kid is going to be learning the hard way that mom and dad aren't quite as happy as he maybe thought. I think it sounds like they both need to go back to couples counseling and try and tackle these issues head on, especially if they want to try and make this work. I don't think you're going to get to the bottom of this until you have someone who can mediate and help you work through your issues. There's also another risky option of the husband approaching his wife and saying, hey, I know you're saying these terrible things about me behind my back and it really makes me feel terrible and I don't appreciate it. I don't know how that one would go, probably not well, but in my opinion, it just doesn't seem like a good idea to keep this stuff bottled up. Overall, this is kind of a terrible situation to be in, and I hope you get it worked out. Today, I messed up by having a Catgirl picture in my presentation as a PhD student. So yeah, I am a PhD student and had to give several presentations this week. The last one was today. The text was already written, I just needed to add some generic images to keep my listeners from falling asleep by a wall of text. I had a picture for nearly every page except for 2 pages, which I didn't mind. mind. I told my office buddy that I will maybe add a picture later, but needed to get to the lab for a moment. As I came back, he told me he added a picture for me. I did not lock my PC, so it was possible, but I thought it was just a joke since we joke a lot. So I had only 5 minutes before I needed to join the seminar in Zoom. So I sat down, took a last look at my notes, and then logged into the seminar. Everything was fine. Then I started my presentation. The first half went really well. I was able to speak clearly and was confident in what I was saying. As you can guess, I then reached a certain slide. This slide contained information about some codes and some predictive information that we needed for the presentation. And then there was the picture. Not at all related to the presentation or the specific codes that we needed. Not at all related to science at all. That is, unless Elon Musk is telling the truth and is really working on genetically modified cat girls, but I doubt that. As I saw the picture, I was absolutely speechless. I was unprepared for the possibility that my friend really added a picture of a cat girl into my presentation. From then on, I was kind of lost. I quickly presented all information and went on to the next slide as quick as possible. But my focus was gone. My ability to speak was gone. I was stuttering my way through the rest of the presentation, already mentally preparing for the aftermath of all of this. As I quickly finished and thanked everyone for their attention, there was absolute silence. A quiet, uncomfortable silence. After a few moments, which felt like an eternity, the professor spoke up and thanked me for my presentation, not mentioning the cat girl at all. The discussion was short and not a word was lost over the codes or the specific things that I went about talking about in my slides. And I was thankfully not asked to go back to a certain slide for clarification, which is nice because other people before me had to do that. After the seminar was over, I waited for an angry email or anything saying that I had failed the seminar and needed to do another presentation. But there was nothing yet. As I confronted my office buddy about the picture, he just laughed. He had told me that he added a picture. I saw him looking at my presentation as I left for the lab, but didn't think he really changed anything. At least it wasn't a not safe for work cat girl. She was clothed after all, but still, it didn't belong anywhere near my presentation. That is absolutely the funniest thing on planet Earth. If I was the friend, I would absolutely have done the same thing. Hopefully the person in this story is on good terms with their buddy. Otherwise, this could have been like friendship ruiner. This could have completely derailed any kind of relationship they have together entirely and completely. I mean, let's imagine the worst case scenario here. This cat girl picture could have possibly cost him his grade and really put him behind on his PhD studies. This could have been really bad. Thankfully, it seems like nobody noticed, or if they did, they were probably way too embarrassed to say anything about it. Or they thought it was hilarious and he got good grades because of it. Either way, this is just really funny and I kind of love how this turned out. Today I messed up by caving to a needy classmate. I had a classmate who wasn't doing well in one of the introductory courses that we were taking. It was incredibly easy, as it was designed to be. However, there was one classmate of mine who I didn't know if he was just simply lazy or if he really didn't get the material, but he was completely lost. He eventually turned to me, asking me to help him out, and this was a complete mess up on my part. I thought I would be kind and benevolent, so I caved. Initially, it was a question here or there. Then it turns out he claimed to understand none of the material, and everything on the assignment stumped him. I'm a patient guy, so I helped him out, but what I didn't realize was how far he was willing to go in order to take advantage of me. One thing led to another, and I went down the slippery slope and did it all. In fact, he went through the whole course with zero effort and was simply dead weight for me. This in turn led to a lot of stress because I was doing two people's work for the price of one. Meanwhile, he got a free ride. By the time I realized what was happening, I was too fearful to admit I've made a big mistake and that I'm an idiot. Since the intro course has two parts, the second one was much more difficult than the first. So to try to remedy the situation, I decided to start ghosting him. He was freaking out because he was a complete mess, but I resisted the temptation. Then I thought to myself that I couldn't stop there. That fear turned into anger for everything he did to me. So I turned him into my professor, who became very concerned and very serious. He did miserably on the second part of the course and was destined to fail. But I don't think much else was done, so I decided I could do better than that. The classmate said he was thinking of transferring to a university closer to his hometown if he wasn't doing so well. So I found that university and called the admissions office. I told them everything. They said they gathered a lot of notes from our discussion and that they would definitely look into it and that they take these issues very seriously. As a result, I think he's unlikely to get into that university if his life depended on it. In all honesty, sometimes you can't help someone if they can't help themselves. The fact that this guy was trying to get a free ride from this other student and basically stressing them out and making them do more work than they needed to was completely uncalled for. I personally would not have gone to the lengths that this person has gone to in order to stop them from not only transferring universities, but also basically trying to move on with their life. But I definitely would have turned them into the professor and told them exactly what's going on. So kudos for them for standing up for themselves and teaching a lazy kid a very valuable lesson. I lost a 100-year-old family heirloom someone gave to me that was very dear to me, and I feel like a complete idiot. I just realized that this happened. My grandfather passed away when I was quite young. My grandfather and I were quite close. He was just the best, you know? My dad had never been the best growing up, but having an amazing grandfather made up for it. One of the few things left to me was a simple gold chain with a crucifix. I am by no means religious, but it holds a different kind of spiritual sentiment to me. I never took this necklace off, only when I had to, like for medical procedures like scans, or for open water swimming, stuff like that. When I do, it is stored in a very specific part of my bag that is very secure, or so I thought. On Tuesday, I was beginning my usual routine in the morning by starting off my day by swimming. I stripped down and placed my necklace in the bag, along with the rest of my possessions. After my laps were completed, I got changed like normal. For some reason, I didn't put my necklace on straight away. Normally, it was the first thing done when exiting the pool. However, I was running late for a meeting with a client, so I got caught in the moment. Fast forward to today. I just realized I still hadn't put it back on. I went into my swimming bag to check for it, only to find that it wasn't there, and the zip for the pocket it was in wasn't done all the way up. The only explanation that comes to mind is that it fell out as I was getting changed. Frantically, I retraced my steps. I tore my house apart, and it is nowhere to be seen. I have worn this necklace for the last 20 years. It is as much a part of me as my hands are. I feel so stupid. This necklace was passed down to my grandfather by my father, and it is at least 100 years old, and now it is gone. My plan was to pass it down to one of my nephews, as I can't have kids of my own. It is currently 2 in the morning, and I'm still searching my house. I have emailed the pool and put up a post on my local Lost and Found group. The swimming pool I go to is attached to the school, which means a student could have picked it up. I just hope it turns up. I'm not sure what I will do without it. Accidents like this happen all the time, so I really wouldn't beat yourself up over this. I've lost things that are valuable to me as well as family members, and it is devastating, and I know exactly where you're coming from. You hold something like this, it's such a high value, and it means so much to you. In all honesty, I hope you find it. I hope somebody comes in and says, hey, I've found your necklace, and you're able to be reunited with something that means so much to you. An entitled mom tries to get me banned from a gym. This was a couple of years ago. I was 15 years old and lived about 2 blocks away from the community gym and would go there often. My routine was weightlifting and then cycling, just because I liked those two. Because I always went around the same time, I got to know and like some of the regulars. Here's how Jimmy, which isn't his real name, and his mother, Karen, came into the story. Jimmy has special needs. He's a really good kid. He likes to use the cycle machines while his mom uses the treadmill on the other side of the room. He absolutely loves anything trains and transportation and likes dumb puns as much as I do. So we became good friends. I learned a lot about the Hungarian subway system, and everything is easy breezy beautiful. One day, Jimmy and I are sitting on bicycles next to each other, as usual, and he starts to come on to me. I sort of just go along with it because he's been doing it for a while, and I didn't really think much of it. I had a boyfriend at the time who Jimmy was well acquainted with at the time as well. When I was first starting to become friends with Jimmy, his mom pulled me aside and told me that he was sensitive to being touched, especially suddenly, which I was cool with and respected. The interaction continues. I was intensely into my workout at that point and not really talking, so when Jimmy reached out and touched my inner thigh, I was completely in shock. Out of reflex, I slapped his hand away. Jimmy broke down. I don't want to go into much detail about it because it's personal to him, but let's just say it caused a scene. This is when his Karen mother went absolutely crazy. I went up to her in almost tears and I said, I am so sorry. It was reflex. I didn't mean to. She goes,
What did you do to my son?
I look at her and say, what do you mean? I didn't try to hurt him. I'm sorry. Is he okay? She gets even more upset at this point and says,
No, what did you do to my son?
At this point, I was fully in tears and gym management had come out to try and assess the situation, and a lot of people were staring. I just said, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. From there on, it was more of the same. Eventually, the manager stepped in and Karen claimed that I had hit Jimmy unprompted and that I had acted really gross around him, and eventually tried to claim I was a predator. I was 15 and fully crying. She demanded that I get banned from the gym, threatening physical violence. The manager, who knew me quite well, was very suspicious of this. She had me go to the back room and tell her my side of the story. She sided with me, thankfully. Jimmy's mother was given a 6-month suspension from the gym, but I never saw her there again. Apparently, this wasn't the first time that this Karen had this kind of outburst. Jimmy went to live with his father a few cities away. I'm not exactly sure why, but I think his Karen mother's anger issues might have been part of it. And overall, I haven't heard from either of them since. A friend who knows his dad told me that Jimmy's taking community college classes now and is doing quite well. This is a terrible situation to be in because nobody wants to be touched unnecessarily and without consent. And if I was the girl in this situation, I absolutely would have reacted in the same way and smacked the person's hand away. I mean, that is very jarring and very triggering and very, very upsetting. It's a shame that the Karen mother had decided to act the way that they did, and it's ridiculous that they tried to make these weird claims against them based on something that their son did. Overall, it's just kind of a super sketchy situation, and it's one of those situations that you hope you never get put in because it's just scary all around. So I don't think the girl's in the wrong for doing this. Karen never came back to that gym. Am I the jerk for stealing $200 worth of lottery tickets at work? I would like to preface this by saying that I have a gambling problem. I'm trying to get better, but it is not easy and I relapse frequently. And right now, I'm just trying to stay on track. It's especially hard because I work at a gas station and I get to stand next to scratch-offs all day. A day ago, I had no money because I lost it to gambling. So I came up with a brilliant idea in my diseased mind. I said, let's just take a $25 scratch-off, ring it into the register, pretend to put money in, and bam! Once I win, I'll just put the money back in the register and keep the rest, right? Wrong. And very stupid. As the night continues on, the slope gets slippery, and before I know it, my drawer is short $200. This is bad. I texted my manager when I was clocking out, lying that my drawer came up short when I was counting it, and I was freaking out and didn't know what to do. She said it's okay. She said to just leave it be and it will turn up in the morning, but I knew it wouldn't turn up, and that I would have to ask them to just take it out of my next check. I thought maybe this would solve my problems, but no, I was wrong. The next morning, I wake up and I text my manager asking if the money showed up. She said that it hasn't, but she was watching some footage from the camera and she had a good idea of what happened. Well, here it comes. A paralyzing panic shoots through my body as 5 minutes later, my manager texts me and asks to see me. I went ahead and drove up to the store knowing that I'd been caught and was prepared to face some petty larceny charges. I get there and there's no cops, which is a good sign. I go in and my manager shows me some footage, basically showing that I'm caught. I explain to her my master plan and my current addiction. She cuts me a deal. No cops, no telling of the higher-ups, just bring back $200 and it can all be forgiven. So I proceed to do whatever it takes to try and get that money to her, ending up having to sell some of my belongings just to make sure I don't see any jail time. Overall, a lesson learned. Gambling is bad. Don't be me. I feel like a massive idiot and I really hate myself right now. To answer the question, yeah, I think you're a jerk, but I think you learned a valuable lesson. I think you also might want to look at getting a different job because standing next to the thing that you're addicted to is probably not healthy. Maybe you can work past it and find some kind of resolution, but based on your previous history of using up $200 worth of scratch-offs, I don't see that as a healthy place to be working at, all things considered. But congratulations on not going to jail, and hopefully next time you won't make a mistake like that again. My girlfriend doesn't include me on big life decisions. I found out recently my girlfriend is applying to jobs to the other side of the country. She's doing that because she isn't happy with the wages that she earns where we are currently living. I have a small business and work full-time 9 to 5 in a tech company. My job is not remote due to me having to deal with hardware. The problem is that I'm sure she won't last. We've been together for almost 3 years and she never held a job more than 4 months. She always finds something wrong and then leaves the job. Due to her job hopping so often, she doesn't see the problem of me just quitting and finding a new job there. Money is a problem in our relationship because I'm the one covering when she isn't working. Especially now, I do not have enough money to move to a new place and cancel the current lease on our home. Her idea would be to just take the debt and do it. What hurts the most is that she keeps saying that if she gets this, she will go because she knows what's best for her. I feel like she is only thinking about herself. Also, the jobs she is turning down due to the wages are all between $75,000 and $80,000 a year. I feel like these wages are good for where we live, especially that she is making a lot less due to not constantly working. What do I do? According to the original poster, it looks like the girlfriend says that she will be going if she gets this new job, and it also sounds like she's implying that she'd be happy to try a long-distance relationship with her boyfriend, but even he is basically saying that he's not sure how well that's going to work out. It's really a shame because from the looks of it, it really does seem from the outside looking in, obviously not knowing all of the details of what's going on, that the girlfriend is only thinking of herself in this situation. She's completely ignoring her boyfriend and everything that they've done together, and I just don't think that's fair. It sounds like they live together and they have a lot of commitments together with finances and other things, so I just don't think it's fair to just get up and leave just like that just because you're not happy with your job. And by the way, earning $75,000 to $80,000 a year doing something is a really good wage. Like, you can live off of that and be very comfortable. So I'm really surprised that she's turning down jobs of that nature. I hate to say it, but it sounds like this relationship is probably going to fall apart, because if she's making big decisions without even including or considering her boyfriend and what he needs to do, then I'm fearful that this might continue if they end up like getting married or something. Overall, this is really messy, and hopefully there's some kind of workaround where they can find some kind of middle ground and make this work. Otherwise, they'll both be doomed to a long distance relationship, and who knows if that could work out. My mom gave me up for $2,500. So some backstory. My mom and dad split up when I was roughly 9 or 10 years old due to my mother cheating on my father when he was out of the country. My father's a pilot, so he leaves quite a bit. At the time, it was me and my 2 older sisters, one of which was already an adult, so my other sister and I were left under my mother's custody due to my father always flying and not wanting us to go through moving all the time. As far as the details go, my dad not only paid my mom child support, but also paid off the house. Despite having little money to take care of himself, he paid my mom more than what he actually owed. Yet my sister and I never saw that money. After the divorce, my mom turned to many things: sleeping around, gambling, drinking, and eventually some more illegal activities. My sister practically became my mother since ours decided to step down from the plate, and I was too young to take care of myself. When my sister left for college, all the emotional abuse she took ended up falling on me, which sent me into a loop. Due to my sister taking all the damage, I typically saw my mother as, well, my mother. My young brain didn't notice how often she didn't come home at night, or the lack of food in the house, or the constant weeks I'd wear one outfit since I didn't have other clothes that fit. I didn't notice how not normal this is. Heading into high school, it became more and more obvious that this wasn't right at all, yet I still loved my mother. We bantered and ate fast food together, and she was proud of my accomplishments. But she did have her moments, sometimes dropping hints that I'm too boyish like my dad, refusing to let me cut my hair, pressuring me into wearing makeup, heels, dresses, convincing me I don't need therapy as my therapist at the time made me uncomfortable, and so on and so on. Meanwhile, my dad met a woman and they fell in love. When she became pregnant with his kids, he moved to America after my little sister was born and started a new family. I love my stepmom. She's literally the sweetest woman I know, and I adore my baby sister. Over time, after spending many nights in their home, I came to realize how much happier I was in their home over my mother's. One day, I told my dad I want to officially live with him. When I told my mother this, she was deeply upset and cried, but she understood, or so I thought. That's when everything went downhill. The text messages started. She started to guilt trip me, saying things like maybe it was your dad that convinced you to move out, and that your dad is convincing you that I'm the bad guy. The more these texts happened, the less I wanted to talk to her. It got to the point where I would cry after every conversation because I was so confused and lost. One day, she practically trapped me in her car in my best friend's driveway to tell me how my reasons for leaving her were absolutely ridiculous and that I clearly don't remember what it was like in that house. This explains some of my personal memory issues too. Fast forward to the good part, the custody case. Due to me being the last child between my mother and my father, my dad no longer had to pay child support. Obviously, they go to court about this, except my mom didn't show up for many, many hearings. When she did, she had this ridiculous story about how my dad owed her a bunch of money because he never paid the full child support, also saying how she felt pressured to believe him and trust him when he said he knew how much he owed her, despite the fact that he actually, in reality, paid more than he needed to. So if you're catching on, this fight was more about money than the kids. Here's a fun little thing. My mom texted me maybe a month before this case, starting about how she desperately wants me to come home, how she will do anything to get her baby back. Well, that aged quickly, didn't it? Because one day, my mom stated that if my dad pays her $2,500, she will give up full custody of me. My dad agreed to it and it was over. She gave up custody rights for $2,500. It still stings. I'm still bitter and angry to this day about it. And this case happened years ago. I don't think my mom is aware I know the details on this case, as she reaches out to me as if we still have a relationship to tell me how much she loves and misses me. The thing is, I learned that my mom actually despised me after the divorce because I reminded her of my dad. My mom just loves being the victim and even tried to convince my sister that she doesn't remember doing all the stuff she did to us. She even blamed my dad for cheating on him and said it to my face. I haven't had a real conversation with her since Christmas, over the phone of course, and haven't seen her in person since maybe before the pandemic. She texted me recently all excited about a gift she got my sister's unborn baby, and it sent a whole new wave of resentment towards her. I stopped trying long ago to have a relationship with her, as she doesn't try in return and will continue to do so until she admits her wrongs, apologizes, and actually tries to be a mother for once in her life. Until then, my only mother is my lovely stepmom. This person had to deal with a terrible mom growing up. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. They basically gave their daughter away for $2,500 and they never cared about them at all. It was all just a money battle, and that is so sad. At least she is out of that household and she never has to deal with that ever again. I can't imagine growing up in an environment like that where your parent is actively trying to ruin you and trying to work against you to prevent you from having any kind of relationship with your father. What a disgusting person. I'm glad things worked out for the most part and they were able to find some semblance of peace in their life, especially since getting away from their terrible mother. My parents don't work and it stresses me out. I'm a 20-year-old female who lives with my parents and my two brothers. My brothers are 14 and 16. My mom used to work at a decent pay at a retail job. She was our main provider for a while, but ended up quitting after 12 years of doing the same job so that she could become a stay-at-home mom for a year or two while my dad provided for the house. In the end, my mom wanted to work again, but she can either only find retail jobs, which she does not want to do again, or other low-paying jobs. So currently, she quit her 3-month job and is now staying at home. My dad is no better. He always quits his jobs. Every month, he quits. Then for 1 to 4 weeks, he does not work, then works again, then quits. It's been a cycle for years. Right now, my dad quit, and with my mom not working, it stresses me out how we're going to survive. I mean, we live decently, but I do not like the carefree mindset and that they can just chip off their savings until they feel like working again. I work so I can provide for myself if need be, but I don't know about my brothers. Plus, my brothers work, and I don't like how my dad has this mindset where they work so they can provide for themselves. Recently, my 16-year-old brother might get better pay, and my dad exclaims how the family will have more money. I didn't like that statement because it's my brother's money, not the family's money. It's almost like he wants his kids to provide for the house instead of him or my mom. I don't know what to do. I tried to hint at them getting a job, but nothing is getting through. That is a very dangerous thing to do, to decide to want to quit over and over and over again. I can understand if you're job hopping to try and find a good place for you, but to job hop just because you don't want to work because you want to quit and lay around is super unhealthy. Think about what kind of example you're leaving for your kids. You're basically telling them that you can just leave your job whenever you want and that longevity doesn't matter. Unfortunately, in some situations, longevity absolutely matters. And if anything, this might be a sight into what the future holds for this person as well as their brother. She is probably going to be seen as some kind of money bank that her parents can then draw from when they retire. And at this point, how on earth are they ever going to retire? Not having a job and not working or making some kind of income is going to make retirement impossible. And in my opinion, she can expect that they'll be probably knocking at her door one day, asking if they can live with her because they have no other options. So at the end of the day, she needs to look out for herself and work for a better future for her. Today, I messed up by going on vacation with my sister and catching a stomach virus from one of her kids. So this happened probably about 6 to 8 months ago. I went on vacation with my mother, my sister, my brother-in-law, and their 2 young children. We were going to a local zoo-like attraction, rented a cabin on the beach, and had planned to stay for a few days. On day 1, we hung out at the beach and had a great time. Day 2 rolls around and we got to go see the zoo-like place and also had a great time. We saw all kinds of amazing creatures. It was a top-notch vacation so far. Then the revenge of Montezuma hits the toddler, and it quickly spreads. I woke up at 5 in the morning on the 3rd day of vacation because my mother had caught whatever stomach virus the kid had, and quite literally went to the bathroom in the bed, if you catch my drift. At this point, I think to myself, well, she's my mom. I'm obligated to help the lady clean up, and then get out of there and go home as fast as I can. About 30 minutes into my drive back, I feel the first warning sign. My stomach feels odd, and I can hear that tiny voice from my gut that's saying,
"Ooh, we about to have a bad time."
So I pull up to a McDonald's with the intent to try and use their bathroom to get out what I could before we hit serious time. And to be fair, what came out of me, well, it was foul. It was like a sulfurous volcano and a swamp got into a car accident. Approximately 10 minutes into creating a fair imitation of what the pits of hell must smell like, I heard the bathroom door open, and then I hear a rich southern baritone call out, "That's ridiculous," and the door promptly shut. I'll never see this man again. I'll never have the faintest clue of what he looks like, but the sound of him judging me me at one of the lowest points of my life, wrecked with my stomach cramps and incubating a biohazard. That, friends, will live on with me as long as I have the cognitive capacity to function. I completed the drive, having a pause every 30 or so minutes to pull over and throw up. When I finally made it home, I went to continue vomiting in the bathroom. Not a huge bathroom. There's barely enough room between the commode and the bathtub to sit and vomit. And in my weakened state, I managed to get stuck there. I threw up so hard, I went to the bathroom all over the place at the same time, if you catch my drift. I don't have afterlife stories like people that passed away for a few minutes, but I do now have the experience of what the actual act of passing away feels like. I'm sure it feels like this. Too weak to move, throwing up so badly that you poop yourself. Thank God my girlfriend loved me enough to help me roll into the bathtub, wash myself, inject Pepto-Bismol directly into me, and then roll me onto the bed to finish passing away. I may have survived, but part of me didn't that day, including whatever shred of dignity I had left. I'm not gonna lie, that's the funniest thing I've read in a very long time. My man just wanted to go on a simple vacation and have a good time, but instead he had one of the worst experiences of his life. I have been there, you have been there, I think all of us have been there at some point in our life, and that is not a fun time. Thankfully, he was able to take care of this while he was at home, even if he had to make a pit stop at a McDonald's bathroom. But if it's any consolation, at least he and probably everybody else that went on vacation probably had to deal with the exact same stomach bug. So at least in that regard, he's not alone, which I don't know if that's something you can look forward to. Today, I messed up by letting a homeless man sleep in my spare room without asking my wife. So I was driving home from a gig tonight around 11 o'clock p.m. and I saw what I thought was a dead body on the side of the road. I pulled over and walked about 500 yards back to the road in the dark to discover a homeless man lying on the shoulder. He was okay. He was just sore with a bad knee. He was cold and wet. I offered to give him a lift and he accepted. We chatted for about 40 miles back to my hometown and I learned that he had prostate cancer. He informed me that his older brother had recently lost a battle with the same disease and that his wife had recently passed away due to COVID. He was hitching to town another 2 hours away to see his estranged 17-year-old son. We discussed his homeless life and tattoo career, as well as hearing how other people had helped him out with a bed or a train ticket. When we arrived in the small town I live in, we drove around for a while trying to find a shelter where he could sleep. As the reality set in, I knew there was nowhere I could take him. It's cold, wet, and he doesn't own a sleeping bag. Finally, I just say, all right, whatever, you can stay at my house tonight. The only thing is, I didn't ask my wife first. She got up when she heard me talking in the basement, our spare room being down there, and I explained the story and she was not happy. I know in my heart I'm doing a good thing, but I also know it's incredibly reckless, and I'm really worried my wife won't forgive me for this. So now I'm sitting upstairs trying to stay awake all night so the homeless guy in my basement doesn't sneak upstairs and steal stuff or even worse. That, my friend, is a very risky move. I'm all about trying to help out the homeless and anybody in need, but man, you've got to be careful. Who knows what that person's intentions could have been? Like for me personally, I'm all about being charitable and helping people in need, but when helping people in need could potentially put a loved one in danger, that's when you might want to double check that what you're doing is actually for the best. I can understand why the wife would be upset. I personally would not want a strange man in the house, especially if I didn't know them, especially if they're coming off the street. Like there's a lot of bad things that you're opening yourself up to. But it sounds like they sussed him out after a 40-mile drive back to where they were going. So I guess it worked out in the end. But next time you've got to be careful because the last thing you want is things getting stolen or even worse to happen. My entitled mother actually talked to my boss behind my back, badmouthed me, and almost got me fired. This is an older story and happened in 2007. I was 30 at the time and had moved back home temporarily. I had gotten a job with a lab, drawing blood in a busy medical center. I was a new employee, and they had a rule that you can't call in sick for the first 90 days. So of course, I went to work sick, and after a few days, it developed into really bad pneumonia. I went to the ER because I had trouble breathing, and they admitted me immediately. I was there for 5 days, and the doctor said I was very lucky. My mother refused to visit me in the hospital. She wouldn't say why, but she just simply refused. I think she was just trying to be mean, but I still don't know why. But anyways, I was so sick I couldn't worry about my job's strict attendance policy. What can you do if you get pneumonia and are in the hospital? It was terrible. I finally got out of the hospital after 5 days, with strict instructions for bed rest. However, my son, who lived with me at my mom's, had to go to school. His school was halfway across town, and I was already really weak. I begged my dad to take him, but he coldly told me no. It's literally over half an hour to drive there. At the time, my boyfriend lived a few blocks away from my son's school, so I went over there so I could at least least get some sleep and not have to drive back and forth 3 times. So that's what I did. Went to my boyfriend's house and slept all day. Well, this did not go over well. My parents got into their head that I was partying and having all sorts of fun times or something like that. They are insane. I could hardly walk. They refused to give my son a ride to school, so I had to take him. It made sense to go to my boyfriend's house since he was only 2 blocks away from the school. Well, on that day, my boss called the house to see what I was doing and when I would get back to work. My mother answered and had quite a conversation with her. Apparently, she told her that I was at my boyfriend's and that if I was well enough to go over there and party, then I should have gone to work in the first place. That stupid Karen. They refused to drive my son to school, something they previously said to do when I was unable to. What was I supposed to have done? I was told to rest at home for at least a week before returning to work. This was the first day I had been home. I was still sick. Why would I drive over 30 minutes each way when I have pneumonia? Wouldn't it make more sense to hang out at my boyfriend's house until the rest of this time is over? I thought so. Apparently my parents assumed I was out there having all sorts of fun times and partying. And my mom told my boss all of this. I didn't know this, but when I got home that night, my mom coldly told me to go call my boss and that there was a problem of some kind. So I call her and I chew her out about how sick I really was. My boss said that she had quite the conversation with my mom about all the activities that day. She said that she wasn't sure she could keep me on, and I was absolutely livid. I was mad at her, my parents. I mean, why would she deliberately sabotage me like that? Especially since I needed that job so that I could move out in a few months. I mean, my parents tell me every day that I'm not wanted there, so I got a job so I could move. And then my mom trashes me to my new boss. I told my boss the situation. It was none of her business. Where I rest is none of her business. I had a doctor's note to stay home a week, and I reminded her of that. I got kind of nasty, telling her that she had no right to tell my mom about my private work business. She kept on, but she always hated me after that. I didn't last long at that job, all things considered. I did confront my mother. As usual, she lied and said that she didn't know what I was talking about. And in the same breath, she had the audacity to say that if I was well enough to hang out all day with my boyfriend, then I was well enough to go to work. I asked her if she thought I was partying and doing all kinds of bad activities, and she said yes. That's exactly what she thought. I could barely walk, but somehow I had the energy to go partying all day. My mom is just straight up crazy. This time my dad finally stepped up when I pointed out that I needed that job so that I could move out. So why would you sabotage me? He yelled at my mom for being a busybody and that she was being extremely childish and nasty. Plus she lied to my boss. I never could understand that. But my mom just loves to bash me to all of her friends and family. My extended family has not spoken to me in 15 years because my mother trashed me to them, telling my aunts that I had all kinds of diseases when I actually only had a kidney stone. This is all just pathological behavior. But now I'm treated like a giant piece of garbage and nobody will really talk to me. And that's not all. My mother has contacted my landlords and other employers as well. I don't understand her constant need to bash me. I'm 44 years old now and it's still hurtful to this day. Man, that's a crazy situation to be stuck in. It's bad enough you don't have a living situation that you can rely on, but then top that off with having parents who are just literally trying to sabotage you and keep it so you can never move forward with life. I mean, what kind of parent would do that? It's especially disappointing that her mom actively tried to get her fired from her job under the assumption that she was partying or doing all kinds of illicit activities, all of which would be happening in the middle of the day, mind you. It's just really disgusting behavior, and it's terrible to do something like that to someone you're supposed to love and care for. It sounds like the mom is just trying to be really controlling and try and ruin their daughter's life. Like she needed the job to move away, and that's probably why the mom sabotaged her. She needed you to be dependent so that she could then continue to try and have control over you, which is just messed up if that's the truth. I don't think they technically need like a lawyer or anything like that, but it sounds like you might need to retain one just in case this keeps happening. Hopefully things got better since this incident, and hopefully you don't have to deal with your mom like that ever again. An entitled Karen gets mad at me because I ask her if she wants her items bagged. Okay, so I used to work in retail. I was not there for long, but long enough to have my fair share of run-ins with a couple of Karens. So one day this lady and her daughter were checking out, and the lady had bought 16 very large sports drinks. Now with items like these, we were only allowed to bag 2 or maybe 3 of them in one bag, and then we would have to double bag it. It was just our store rule. Now I've had people get upset with me in the past for giving them so many bags, especially when things had to be double bagged. And so I knew this lady was going to end up with quite a few bags, and I decided to be nice and ask first if she wanted the sports drinks bagged up, and this is how it went down. I politely asked, "Ma'am, do you want these drinks in a bag?" The Karen says, "What? Are you serious? Why would you even ask that?" And before I could answer, she was getting very huffy and started started bagging them herself. Her daughter tried to stop her and told her to let me do it, but the Karen replied with,
"No, apparently she doesn't know how to do her job right."
She finished bagging the sports drinks and then storms off, leaving her daughter standing there with a look of "I'm so sorry" on her face. The angry Karen then comes back in 2 minutes later with my assistant manager. My assistant manager walks over to me and asks me what the problem was, and to be honest, I was confused. She then said, "This lady said you were rude and didn't do your job properly." Now, my assistant manager was a no-nonsense kind of gal, but she knew I was not normally rude to customers. So I explained what happened and why I had asked a question, and my assistant manager simply looks at the lady and was like, "Really? You dragged me up here because she asked you a simple, logical question?" The Karen was still fuming and replied with,
"Well, she needs to do her job better."
And then she stormed out with her daughter. I then explained to my assistant manager why I had asked the question in the first place, and she told me that she understood where I was coming from, but from now on, just bag everything like normal and double bag if it's heavy, unless the customer says otherwise. And if they whine about the amount of bags, just ignore them. So yeah, that happened. I mean, really all Karen had to do was say, "Yes, please bag those sports drinks," and I would have done it, no questions asked. But instead, she got angry and told my assistant manager, "I don't work in retail anymore, but guys, be nice to retail workers. They're just trying to do their jobs while also trying to keep a customer happy." I don't blame the original poster for saying, "Hey, do you want extra bags or not?" Some of those sports drinks and like some of the popular ones can be really heavy, especially if you get them in a 6-pack or an 8-pack. Those things will tear through the flimsy bags we're given nowadays so easily. I don't blame them for deciding that as a store policy, we're going to double bag these. Because imagine you get out to your car and you're trying to bag it in your trunk and then suddenly it rips through and it goes all over the parking lot. Nobody wants that. But it seems like this Karen came into this store wanting to argue with somebody and she got her wish, but she absolutely got shut down. I love working for assistant managers like that who don't take any of this nonsense and will shut down people if they're rude to their coworkers. Having someone like that on your side is so valuable, and it's great to see in action, especially with this original poster. I had a falling out with my in-laws, and I'm not sure what to do to move forward. 8 months ago, I stopped working to stay at home with my kids. We are in a fortunate position that I can still also have help. We have a nanny that comes by for 15 to 20 hours a week and a weekly housekeeper. My in-laws were not very supportive, particularly my mother-in-law, who made some judgmental comments over the course of several weeks that I would be doing nothing with my time and how women should work. My mother-in-law was a lawyer and never stayed home with the kids. I told my husband it hurt my feelings, so he talked to his dad, who was very apologetic, and we went to their house to reconcile. Well, we arrived and it ended up being an ambush. They unloaded other grievances, like a time where they had to wait 30 minutes for me to get ready. Also that I share important things on Instagram before telling them first, and about how I also dare think that my mother-in-law's comments were anything other than playful. I was shocked. I thought our relationship for the past decade had been pretty good, but I realized in that 2-hour session that they kind of don't like or respect me. I cried, I shot back, and we all walked away unresolved. I have been cordial with them since then, but they do not seem apologetic at all. I have generally been avoiding them for the past 8 months, though I did host them for Thanksgiving, a school Christmas pageant, and I went to their house for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. We also went over for the Super Bowl and hosted them for 2 hours when they randomly popped by. I also invited them to the baby shower, though they didn't come, which was surprising, but I mean, whatever. The problem is that they don't like the current state of affairs and are complaining to my husband about it. They want to see us more and are mad we didn't spend Easter and one of the kids' birthdays with them. They moved states to be near us in their retirement a year ago and are expecting more because of that. I feel like before this fight, I gave them exactly what they were expecting, tons of time and attention, and what I got was judgment and conflict. So now I am pulling back and I want to spend more time with my own extended family and also with my family alone. In short, I want to spend less time with them. It's already hard enough to swallow when my husband and kids spend time with them without me because I just cringe at them being in my life. I want to be reasonable, but I don't know how to do it. My in-laws and my husband want things to go back to the way they were. I don't know if I could ever fully trust them again. What do I do? It seems like the husband is definitely not helping the situation. Like from the looks of it, it looks like he's just stuck in the middle, and while he obviously wants to try and have a good relationship with his parents, I think he needs to be the one to step up and tell them to back off. He needs to be way more supportive of his wife and show that he cares. This seems like everybody's ganging up on her, and it just does not seem like a good relationship situation. And it doesn't seem like you're avoiding them at all, in my opinion. You've hosted them for several occasions, and they've even been over to your house. It's obviously very hurtful that they think low of you and they think that you're not a good person or something along those lines, but at the end of the day, you do not have to deal with that. Their opinion of you does not define you. I think your plan to go back and kind of focus more on your family as well as your parents parents is a good plan. That might give you some nice breathing room in the face of this really weird situation. Overall though, keep taking the high ground, be the better person, and just know that they really in the long run don't matter as much as you might think. But that's just my opinion. What do you think? Leave a comment down below. What would you do if you were in her situation? My manager didn't give me a promotion because he didn't like that I was homeschooled. I left my first job a few months ago, a job that I had had for 3 years. It was a retail store that I helped build up from the ground up, one that I joined during my freshman year of college. Each year, my evaluation went up, and by the end of the second year, one of the managers gave me a task on behalf of the store manager that gave me more hours to work in the back room. And he said it was because one of the logistic managers was leaving and that they were thinking of me to take his place. I accepted the assignment because the increase in hours was really nice. After training and carrying the new position for almost a year, they announced that the manager would be leaving as they were being promoted and going to another store. And this was after they told me that I was a front runner for his position and even had me meet with the district manager, who told me that there were no other candidates besides myself. However, after the meeting where they said that they would have to follow up to do some paperwork to probably make it official, I was surprised when they told me that they decided to bring a different manager on from a different store to take this other manager's place, despite the verbal agreement that we had come to in the first place. I felt terrible, but a friend who's also a manager told me that it happens and you just gotta move on and find something better. So I went to a new job where I work on the phones and customer service, but there are days where I'm still disappointed. Fast forward a few months from leaving retail, and the manager who offered me the task on behalf of the store manager offered to meet for lunch, and I went because he was really cool and I liked him. So when we met, he told me that he was planning to leave too, but that there was something he wanted to talk to me about. When I asked him what it was, he said that some of the other managers often spoke bad about me because I was homeschooled. They called me terrible names behind my back. In addition to other things, he said that a few of them opposed promoting me, all because they looked down on me, and apparently they looked down on him too for supporting me. They often made jokes about me, saying that they didn't like me because I was homeschooled and that they thought I was stupid. I have been homeschooled since the 2nd grade, and this is after my parents decided to take me out of school for religious reasons, and I have often doubted my social skills despite making an effort to improve them at my job, almost to the point of getting promoted. My former manager that I was meeting with for lunch said that I had every technical qualification for the promotion, but that it didn't matter in the end, which it hurts. I've often struggled with the stigma of being slow from others, and it's made me doubt my chances of ever finding someone too that I will love. Overall, it was just a terrible experience, and I know that I will make sure that I never get treated that way ever again. That is disgusting behavior from his coworkers. They actively tried to prevent them from getting this promotion, all because they were homeschooled. They said some terrible things about this kid as well that I left out of this story on purpose, but just know that it's really hurtful and it's really uncalled for. You don't treat people like garbage like that just based on their upbringing. That's such a terrible thing to do. This kid in my eyes had every qualification and deserved to be the store manager, and it just sucks that people got in his way and prevented that from happening. But at the end of the day, this is just a minor setback, and he will absolutely flourish at a new job that appreciates him and values him as a member of their team. He will absolutely do much better. I think my boyfriend stole all of my money, and I don't know what to do about it. My boyfriend and I have been living together for just a little under a year, and I'm pretty sure he just emptied my bank accounts. I only found out an hour ago. My phone banking app got blocked 3 days ago, and at the time I couldn't figure out why, but I've been in bed as sick as a dog for the past week, so I couldn't get to the bank until now. The nice lady at the bank very kindly showed me how my bank account was drained by a series of smallish payments, all sent to his phone number, and then the withdrawal. Both my savings account and my checking account now have negative balances. I don't have any money for rent or food or gas or anything. I confronted him, but he is denying it. I can't even tell myself to trust him and to consider my options as I had in the past, since he cheated on me a month ago. He is adamant that he has no use for my money, but it was all sent to his number from my phone the same day he was with me to supposedly look after his sick girl, as he put it. We live together. He is dependent on me for rent, utilities, most bills, and pretty much everything else. He recently has had some illegal substance issues, and this stunt with some illegal substances pretty much burned all the bridges in his life. So if I throw him out, he will have nowhere to go. I've had to leave him alone at my house since I am writing an exam on campus in less than an hour, but he claimed that he would be gone by the time I came back, and that he would leave double the amount stolen on the bed to prove he doesn't need the money. It honestly feels like he is trying to bribe me. My dad wants me to report him to the police, where he got a job literally yesterday. I'm having the worst day that I've had in a long time, and I simply don't know what to do. I don't have any close friends or family. He sort of pushed everyone and everything else out of my life a while ago. Can anyone help with some advice? What should I do? It seems like this guy absolutely did steal from you. I mean, everything points in that direction. The bank reports don't lie. They all went to his account. And if you've got documentation of that and you have proof of that, you might want to look at getting an attorney as well as kicking this guy out of your house. The man robbed you. He took your money. It doesn't matter if he's going to pay you back with double the amount. That's ridiculous. This could easily happen again. You should call the bank and let them know what's going on, and at least they can be on alert or put some kind of notice on your account to not accept any withdrawals from this person. But in all honesty, it might be time to call the police and report him for theft. This guy has isolated you and pushed everybody else out of your life except for him. It's time to reconnect with some family who probably misses you and cares about you and wants to see you succeed. You do not need this, in my opinion. My relationship with my parents has been a struggle ever since my health issues, and I don't know what to do. I am a 33-year-old man and have for the past several years now struggled to get to the bottom of chronic health symptoms that have proven difficult to figure out. Early on, when I ran into a brick wall with my then doctor, I went to my parents for support since I knew that I wasn't imagining it and I was getting fed up with having to deal with this problem. I went to them expecting that they would take my side and support me 100%. I was wrong. My mother listened to me at first, but my father was almost completely tone deaf about it. When I explained to him what was going on and how I was feeling, he said, well, it could be that you have XYZ, go to your doctor and see what he says. But after I went to the doctor and the doctor told me that he didn't find anything wrong with me, he completely turned on me. Anytime I would bring up my health, he would always play the contrarian to whatever it was I had to say, always taking the opposite side. It didn't matter if he understood it or not, he would always find a way to argue. Anyone else have troubling dynamic like this? What did you do about it? I'm trying to talk to my mom about it, but it's fruitless. She's a lush and doesn't remember half of what you talked to her about. And my sibling is a total mercenary who only calls when it serves her best interests first. I guess I just need to get this off my chest, but I really don't know what to do. If you were in my shoes, what would you do? I would find another doctor first and foremost. It sounds like the parents and your siblings are not at all helpful, so that's more than enough obvious evidence in my opinion that you should be looking to other people for support. I mean, it's bad enough that you have issues going on with your health that you can't really explain, but having people say that you're faking it or just simply not listening or not caring is really soul crushing, and I hope this person finds support that can help them find some kind of solution, because nobody should live their life that way. My supposed friend came back to me after months of ghosting me, only to then start ghosting me again. I have a 23-year-old friend who has been trying to get in touch with me since January and has finally reached out wanting to meet up with me after all this time. The period of silence was due to life issues and a falling out we had, but now she's back and I couldn't be happier about it. We apologized to each other, had a chat over text, and agreed to meet up. I've tried for the past 3 weeks to arrange something with her, but every time she just changes the subject as if I never even asked her. For example, I asked for a particular weekend and the topic has suddenly switched to something completely random. I would prefer it if she would just come clean and told me if she's free or not, but I assume she's busy and doesn't want to meet up based on her reactions. But then again, why would she agree to meet up and then flake on every possible arrangement that I make? It's a waste of time and energy. I have no other friends and it hurts me knowing that this person might not even care about me either. I gave her chance after chance and I keep trying every week as I always give her the benefit of the doubt, but I'm losing my patience now. If you were in my shoes, what would you do? In my opinion, this person is probably not worth your time. Like, I'm all about giving people second chances, fourth chances, 12 chances, but this seems like a perpetual habit of theirs and it doesn't seem like they know how to commit to things, and that's really just a waste of energy on your part. Even if you do get up and meet with them and have some kind of friendship, if you will, I feel like this stuff will always keep coming up and it'll just lead to an empty friendship. That's my opinion, at least. I know she says that this person is their friend and that they don't have any other friends to rely on, but a real friend would be caring and they would make time for you. I personally understand that everybody's busy and has something going on, but this is the second time that this person has stepped into your life and flaked out. So it might be better just to find new friends than to keep trying to reach out to someone who is clearly not showing the effort to be your friend. An entitled mother tried to get me fired for protecting her daughter's identity. So a few years ago, I used to work for a call center that took debit and credit card fraud calls, and I had been trained to also work with people who were victims of identity theft. This subject was always per company policy and very touchy, but there were far too many people who were too entitled to take everything seriously. One particular instance was from an 18-year-old who called in because her debit card wasn't working. She came on the phone furious because she was on a shopping spree and her card stopped working. What was even worse was, even though she admitted that she got a message from the bank regarding the suspicious activity activity on her account. She called the number on the back of the card and demanded that I turn the card back on. I said, I'd be happy to help you get your card working. Can you please verify your first and last name? She gives me an attitude and says,
Didn't anything populate for you on the screen? Either your automated system is messed up or you need to actually do your job and stop being lazy.
I politely answered, well, yes, a profile appeared on my screen, but company policy states that I need to verify whom I'm speaking to so I can make sure I have the right information. The 18-year-old huffs and puffs and gives me the information I need. But thanks to the changes made to her account because of the suspicious activity, I needed even more information. I wasn't able to verify her into the account, which meant I couldn't turn the card back on. The 18-year-old started screaming at me about how I didn't do my job right and had no business asking her all these questions. Eventually, she ends the rant by saying that she's calling her mom. Thankfully, she hangs up the phone in the process, and I thought it was the end of it. But boy, was I wrong. I had about 15 minutes left to my shift, and I was about to pull myself out of the call queue so I didn't get pulled into a call, only to then get a call thanks to the small delay in the loading screen. And of course, it's the 18-year-old that I was speaking with earlier, and this time she has her mom on the phone. The mom says,
Are you the one who refused to turn on my daughter's card?
Having done this a few times and knowing exactly where this was going, I said, no, but I would be more than happy to help her turn the card on. May I get your name, please? The entitled mother was a little more civil, but I already had an idea where this was going, especially since this was not an isolated occurrence. I got her verified into the account and saw that she was on the same account in question. This gave me the perfect opening to start the bad part of the call, and I told her that the system wouldn't allow me to unlock the card due to the fact that there's been suspicious activity on the account and we needed to verify some information. She remained civil and even encouraged her daughter to be civil as well, which helped when I tried to verify the daughter's account. Of course, the daughter failed to verify into the account, mostly due to the fact that the daughter literally knew nothing about her past addresses or car she's owned, and I gave the same verbiage as before. This time, everybody lost their mind. The entitled mother says,
What do you mean you can't unlock her card? She answered all the questions.
I told her, unfortunately, the information she gave me was incorrect, and we're locked out of the account. You can call back and try again, or I can file a request for one of our backroom investigators to give her a call back based on the contact information we have. But honestly, there's nothing I can do for you at this time. The mom says,
Just turn on the card. You verified me into the account.
Then the daughter says,
That's her. That's the lady who locked me out of my account and won't turn it back on.
I tried explaining everything to them, but they continued yelling and cussing me out for everything. Eventually, I saw that I was now 30 minutes over my shift and told them that they could call back or wait until the investigator called them. They continued to cuss me out, and per company policy, I ended up hanging up when they continued to cuss at me after I warned them that this was our policy. The following day, I found out that the entitled mom and her daughter had called in several more times, demanding each and every time that a supervisor fire me. I actually ended up with a few Facebook messages with the same random woman and her daughter over the next few days, all because one of the workers from our trashy sister company broke company policy and gave them my first and last name, as well as my location, so they could contact me regarding my supposed bad behavior. I took the messages to my supervisor, who blew it off and told me just to ignore it, and I ended up blocking both of them. They lived out of state, and I hadn't updated my current location in a few years, thankfully. I refused to be on Facebook for a while, and I was looking over my shoulder constantly, and I wanted to go after the worker that outed me the way they did. I found their information and filed a formal complaint with corporate, and I was told later that that worker was fired. And I was also told that I was out of line for going to corporate for this. Let's just say I didn't end up staying there much longer. Anyone who has worked in customer service or at some kind of call center can attest that some of the craziest people call in and say the most ridiculous things. I'm not totally surprised by this interaction in the slightest because I've dealt with something like this on a personal basis once before. It is a nightmare, but I can only imagine how much of a nightmare it would be if it didn't stay at work. Can you imagine if some angry customer who's upset with you found out where you lived and had your Facebook account so that they could message you and go after you? That is absolutely crazy to me, and that is such a huge breach of privacy. It's great that that other employee who betrayed their coworker got absolutely fired, but that's not okay that corporate, as well as the supervisor in question, completely blew off the incident and said it was not a big deal and that you should just block them. Like, that is not okay. Hopefully, though, the original poster found a better job and that they're now working for someone who actually cares about them and actually has their best interest in mind. My boyfriend is being way too flirtatious with my best friend over text message. I read the chats of my boyfriend being incredibly flirty with my childhood friend. It's his nature to act this way, but it comes off as really just way too much. So for some backstory, I introduced my friend to my boyfriend about 5 years ago. They started talking and started meeting more often. My friend keeps visiting the area for work, so it kind of worked out. My boyfriend is very flirtatious in an innocent and playful way with girls, which is usually funny for everybody. He tells me that they flirt as he loves teasing me. On the other hand, my friend tells me nothing. Eventually though, they started talking too much. They started having video calls and having a little too many text conversations, which all honestly made me very uncomfortable. After almost a month of this, I was up late at night thinking about it and just randomly tried a few passwords to one of the social media accounts that my boyfriend has. Surprisingly, I logged in and I was able to read the chat, and this chat was very deep. They would call each other bae for fun. My boyfriend is like that usually, but my best friend was too open and openly flirting way too much for my comfort. I am crying right now reading all of this. I feel so betrayed. I know I read something which I wasn't supposed to, but the chats were honestly very problematic. I don't know what to do or how to even talk about it without sounding like a total psychopath. What do I do? This is a tricky one because I know people like this who are incredibly flirtatious with everybody they meet. It's like everyone around them is up for grabs to make them feel cuddly and cute, and it's almost a little bit awkward because it's very easy to read them wrong. These people are also considered a massive tease because you never know if they're actually being genuine and if they're actually trying to find some interest in you or if they're just acting like this to everybody. So I totally understand where this lady's coming from, where she feels like she's betrayed and that she is losing her boyfriend. First and foremost, her supposed best friend is not her best friend. This friend is being way too flirtatious with this guy. Like, it'd be different if this is both of their personalities and this is just how they get along, but it sounds like the guy's the one who is innocently flirtatious with people, but the girl is not. Regardless of personality types, you need to say something to your boyfriend. You need to tell him outright, I really don't like the way you're talking to other girls. You could even explain how it makes you feel vulnerable and how it makes you feel like he doesn't love you anymore, which is all true and is basically what she's saying in this story. In my opinion, you gotta talk to him and explain exactly how you feel, otherwise he's not gonna get it. The original poster goes on to say in some of the comments that her boyfriend is incredibly loyal, that he loves her so much, and that he would never try and ruin their relationship that they've worked on. And if that's the case, then talking to him about this really shouldn't be a problem. In my opinion, he's probably gonna be okay with this and understand where his girlfriend's coming from. I don't think snooping around someone's social media is the answer, but it did provide some very serious concrete answers that she can go with. It's not always the answer, and I definitely don't encourage it, but I think for this one extenuating circumstance, it kind of worked out, even if you probably shouldn't have done it. So overall, I hope this gets worked out, and hopefully her boyfriend is understanding that he can't just go around flirting with every girl that he sees, because at the end of the day, it makes her feel like she's just not wanted. A woman I have a crush on confessed to me that she has feelings for me, even though she has a boyfriend, and now I don't know what to do. I met Megan a few months ago through a shared class at college. We sat together and would talk in class all the time. Then we would walk together to the parking lot after class ended. Halfway through the semester, I thought she was really attractive, cool, smart, you name it. So I asked her out and she rejected me with, I'm flattered, but I don't want to give the wrong impression. I felt a little bad, but didn't regret shooting my shot. 3 days after we were in class, I was just making a casual conversation with her and asked her what her plans were for the weekend. For the first time, she mentioned she had a boyfriend. She briefly and kind of quietly said, I'm going to do whatever my boyfriend wants to do over the weekend. I thought it was a little odd she never mentioned him before, but whatever. The weeks go by and we get a little friendlier with each other, and we really enjoy each other's company. I still had feelings for her, but I had zero hope of being with her at all. The other day, she sent me the following text message. So when you asked me out, what were your intentions, I guess? I'll be straight up. I kind of like you, but I'm in a bad spot, and I'm either being an idiot by saying all this and ruining our friendship, but I just want to clear some stuff up because I really felt like some days things were very weird. I told her then that I liked her. I found her attractive and I wanted to be closer to her. She then went on to say, okay. Well, right back at you. And yes, I always look forward to seeing you. Honestly, if you had asked me out at a different time, I would have said yes, 100%. But I am kind of in a bad spot. And by bad spot, I mean that I do have a boyfriend. And I really shouldn't even be saying all this, but like I've never been in this situation before. Some days I thought it was weird because I didn't know if I was leading you on or not. And if I was, I really apologize. I didn't ever want to give that impression. I don't like those types of people. Essentially, I've wanted to talk to you about this for a while, but I really didn't know how to bring this up without ruining something. She goes on to say that they both have really good chemistry together, and that how obviously they can't make this work because she is in a relationship. She can't help but say that maybe there's something there between them. So now, I'm super confused. Why tell me you like me and then say I can't do anything about it at this moment. Like, how am I supposed to respond to that? She isn't the cheating type, so it's not like she suggested that. I've never been in this situation, so I don't know what to do. And even worse, she's been dating her boyfriend for nearly 4 years. We also have class together next semester, and she knows this because we confirmed it days before. What should I do? In my opinion, it looks like she's looking for another person to go with because she's not happy with her boyfriend. It sounds like she's about to leave him. It's also kind of obvious that she's kind of considering cheating while also not being like totally open of like, hey, let's have something together. Like, if I was this guy, I would not go any further with this, and I would wait for her to either get out of her current relationship or encourage her to try and keep that relationship going. The last thing you want is to be considered the person that helped her cheat, because that's not good for anybody. That's a terrible look. So I think biding your time and maybe waiting this out to see what happens might be in your best interest. Either way, this is a really sticky situation and you've got to be careful. My family keeps giving me expensive gifts and it makes me feel like garbage. I know, stupid problem, right? I sound so entitled just reading this. I'm a teenage girl and my birthday was a while ago. Long story short, for my birthday, I didn't get anything I wanted. I'm not exaggerating. One of my presents was literally something my little brother wanted. So I think I'm a simple person. I like cartoons, anime, and comfy clothes. I've never been a big makeup or jewelry person. I'm not the type to dress up, and I've been mistaken for a boy a lot. So after Christmas, I started using the gift money to buy cool jewelry. Nothing pretty, just glow-in-the-dark stuff and anime merch. You know what I mean? I think my mom took it as an invitation to make me more girly. So even though I made it clear that I just wanted to buy some art supplies, she decided to get me a giant jewelry box with jewelry and 2 very clearly expensive makeup kits. I hated it. I don't want to use makeup or wear expensive jewelry, but I just smiled and said thank you. I know I'm a coward, but my mom has a very small fuse when it comes to me not liking what I get. God knows how she'd react if I told her I hated what she got me. What makes me even more confused is we're by no means well off. My mom's always talking about how we can't afford stuff and that it takes a lot to keep us fed. So why spend so much on jewelry? Anyway, tonight I was just about to fall asleep when my mother bursted in and turned the lights on without warning, giving me a present from my granddad. It was 2 necklaces and a pair of earrings, ignoring the fact that now I'm going to have to re-pierce my ears, which, by the way, sparkling new earrings is not worth the pain. I don't know what made me so upset this time. Maybe it was because I still had to fake a smile since my mom was watching me, or maybe because I specifically showed my granddad an $8 keychain on eBay I wanted, but he decided to do this. I just broke down. I'm bawling my eyes out as quietly as I can so my family doesn't hear. I don't get it. My big brother wanted a second laptop for his birthday. He got it. My little brother wants all these toys that he only uses once, and guess what? He gets them as well. And all I want were cheap art supplies. But every time I get more of these expensive gifts, the guiltier I feel, and I feel like I'm gonna throw up. What do I do? How do I fix this situation? Honestly, it seems like you're in a phase where you don't really want jewelry, and that's totally fine. You're a teenager, you're allowed to change your mind, and you could change your mind at any point. So with the jewelry, maybe just keep it. Like, there's no reason to feel guilty. They're giving it to you, so that's totally okay, but maybe save it for when you're an adult. You never know if you're gonna want it as an adult. Like, you may look back and be like, man, I wish I kept some of that jewelry that my parents kept getting me. Even though you don't want it now, you might want it later. You never know. Or you wait till you're older, take all that jewelry and straight up sell it. Make bank off that. I mean, once you're in your own house and you have your own thing, you can just take that, sell it, and make some money off of it. What are they going to do about it? And I don't think it's specific gifts where your parents are trying to mess with you or your grandparents are trying to mess with you. It sounds like they just don't really understand who you are or what you like. There is the option where you can try and teach them, hey, this is what I actually like, while still showing appreciation for what they got you. That way you can avoid people getting offended and you can kind of explain or even make up the idea of, hey, this is now what I'm interested in. That way you can kind of lead them to what you've always liked, and it might work out in your favor. But I don't think you should feel guilty about this. I don't think you should be so hard on yourself. And in all honesty, just take it one step at a time and try and find the silver lining. Should I forgive my husband who cheated on me a month before our marriage and confessed after getting married? I met my husband at my workplace 5 years ago. He was very kiddish, very innocent, deeply fond of me, and honestly just a genuine guy. And I was on the same team as my husband's, but I was only friends with him. At the time, I was stuck in a bad relationship with someone else. I knew that I wanted to come out of that bad relationship, but didn't have the courage to take the right step to come out of that relationship. My husband, who at the time was a good friend, helped me a lot and helped me to learn how I can appreciate myself. With this help, I was able to take the right call and break up with this toxic relationship that I was currently in. I always knew that my good good friend, who is now my husband, liked me a lot and really wanted to be with me. Initially, I didn't feel the same for him, but as we spent more time together, I saw myself falling in love with him, and we were together. All of this is 5 years ago too. During those 5 years, we went through a lot. Long distance relationship, my boyfriend having a hard time forgetting some details from my past, but all of this seems so little because we loved each other a lot. We went on vacations together, we loved partying with each other, going on walks with each other. We grew up from girl-boy to man-woman together. We matured together, progressed in our lives together. And except for some of the above conflicts that I mentioned, we had the best time with each other. Soon enough, he proposed. Our parents agreed, and eventually, after a long wait, our wedding date was finalized. I went back to my home a month before my wedding, as I was working from home, to prepare for the wedding. But my husband's office wasn't very keen on giving him long times off and potentially working from home. So he planned to travel 3 weeks later than me. And due to COVID guidelines, there was a change in the wedding guest limit. So we had to postpone our wedding date by a month from the initially planned date. So my husband was alone for 1 month and 3 weeks in a different city than mine. And this is where everything toppled upside down in my life. Remember, he took time off to travel. While I was at my parents' place in a different city, my husband was staying alone. I felt a little distant because he started messaging me less. He started calling me less, and whenever I raised this, he used to say that his battery died, or that he was working, or that he was not feeling well, or that I should understand that he has lots of office work to do, so he can't be spending time on Messenger or giving me daily updates. It felt odd. But I thought he might be having some work pressure, so despite feeling sad, I just ignored it. One day, basically out of nowhere, he called me stating how he was uncomfortable with my past, stating that he had always been angry about some of the things that I had done previously, and basically confessed that he paid to see another woman, if you know what I mean. He confessed this and then he cried a lot. He said he regrets doing everything and got swayed away with emotions. He promised he can never do this again. He said he loves me and he's not able to sleep knowing that I might leave him after knowing all of this. He said he was so sorry. I cried a lot. I didn't know what to do. My wedding date was finalized. I loved him, and here he is confessing everything to me, promising to never do this again, slapping himself and begging for me to not leave him. But I couldn't leave him. I told him I am not okay with this, and our relationship has taken some damage because of this. But I said that maybe time can help me forget about all this happening, and this was honestly my biggest mistake. Fast forward, and he is in the same town for the marriage, apologizing in front of me, holding his ears, crying, and promising with all his heart that he would never do this again, and that if he could go back in time and fix this mistake, he would. After listening to everything that he said, and like a stupid, spineless little girl, I thought, this can be healed with time, and we will eventually get married. And today is our 2nd month anniversary. As I could never actually get past this thing, I always kept on bringing the topic back, asking him for more details and why he would do this. I wanted to know who it was with, when, and where. And every time we discussed it, he ended up giving a little piece of extra details each time. He even said that if I knew everything that happened, I wouldn't want to marry him. And that caused a lot of disturbance inside me. I wanted him to be completely honest, so I kept asking. So he eventually confessed everything. And to my shock, the details were so much worse than I could have possibly imagined. But after going through all of this and marrying me, he said that he has more respect for our relationship now, and he loves me more than ever, and he imagines the rest of his life with me. So he wants me to forget everything and to continue to love him. But I am fully broken inside. I can't let go of the fact that he cheated on me and continued to cheat on me. He would chat with other girls and meet with friends with benefits and do all sorts of disgusting things behind my back. And all of that too after making a promise over the phone to never do that to me again. I don't trust any of his words anymore, and I don't know what to do. I think he cheated on me again, to be completely honest. But whenever I say that I want to go away, he starts saying that he loves me, he kisses me, he cries in front of me, and I end up sticking around. But I feel like I can't forget this, and I can't love him the way I used to. What should I do? This does not sound like a healthy relationship. It sounds like to me that this guy is playing this lady. He got caught red-handed, but it looks like he thinks his out is just to continuously say that I love you and that I'm never going to do it again, and then hoping that she'll eventually let it go. But she should not let this go. This is a massive red flag. He is walking all over you, and he's basically getting a free ride to do whatever he wants. Because I guess according to him, he can just get away with paying to see another woman, if you know what I mean, and nothing bad will really come of it. He will still be able to come home to his loving wife, who is very clearly able to forgive him pretty quickly, and that in some way probably absolves him of any guilt. It's disgusting behavior and is completely counterintuitive to what a marriage should be. What kind of trust can you possibly have if this is is what this guy's doing behind your back. Like, it seems like he holds her pass against her, but doesn't want to get the same treatment, which is really not fair. I'm really sorry for the lady that's in this position. And if this is really bad enough and you can't find a solution, I think you might need to start looking at your options and have a serious talk with someone who can help you about whether you even want to be with this person. Because this is not fair for the female in this situation, and she deserves so much better. An entitled mother tried to force me to babysit her kid as she dropped them off at the pool, despite that not being my job. So there was a small incident at my pool a few years back in the summer of 2014. This was one of the first years I'd be working as a lifeguard. It's nothing as grandiose as some of the other encounters people on here have had, but I figured I could share it anyways. For background, it's a small HOA pool that struggles to staff people to the point where there's only one lifeguard on duty at a time, if we're even lucky to have that. The pay isn't terrible, and you only have to work a 4-hour shift, but you also get to deal with some entitled folks now and then. So you win some and you lose some, I guess. There's a section in the rules that specifically states that unless a child is 16 years of age or over, they must have a parent or guardian at the pool with them at all times. I have never had to enforce this until this day. An entitled Karen came in with a 5-year-old, set the kid down, and went to leave. Now, as we require people to bring passes so we know they are part of the neighborhood, as well as to make sure that they're not on the ban list, or to make sure that they're not behind on their payments or any other disputes, I called out to her and politely asked her if she could bring her passes to me. She stops, has a slightly annoyed look on her face before walking back around the pool to give me the child's pass, and then goes to try and leave again. I then ask if she has a pass or an ID of her own, and she continues walking off to the exit, presumably not having heard me. I ask the child to stay, and then I go after her, letting her know that she has to present a pool pass or a photo ID if she wants to stay. It is at this point that she tells me, very rudely might I add, that she isn't staying, she has some things she needs to do, and that she'll be back in an hour, and she wanted us to watch her kid while she was gone. I reply as calmly as I can that I cannot allow her child to be on pool property without supervision. The entitled mom says, "You're here, aren't you? Just do your job and watch her then." I reply to this by saying, "Ma'am, I work as a bag boy at a grocery store and a lifeguard on the weekends. I am not a babysitter. If you'd like my services as a babysitter, my fee is $25 an hour, but otherwise I will need you to stay and give me your pool pass or your driver's license or any other form of identification. Or you can pay the $2 guest pass, or you can take your child and leave." Apparently my attitude did not please her because she took offense and demanded to speak with the person in charge. After she asked for that, I told her that I am the one in charge, and apparently she didn't like that. So I ended up getting the head of the pool committee and told her that I would be happy to give them a call and have them speak with you. She said that yeah, I can go ahead and do that, along with some very choice words and adjectives that should not have been said around her child, as she told me that she was going to report my attitude and say all these other terrible things to my boss. I went over to the phone and called my boss and let them know the situation before handing the phone to the Karen. I couldn't hear what was said, but it was clear he asked what had been said because she repeated my comment verbatim. All I heard after she finished was my boss absolutely laughing. Needless to say, the poor child did not get to go to the pool that day, and that's one thing I regret about all of this. She ended up leaving, and that was that. That lady is a terrible parent for just dropping their kid off at the pool with a stranger, mind you, and then saying, "Hey, this is your problem now." Like, why couldn't the mom just take the kid with them and say, "Hey, let's do our errands, and then I'll watch you at the pool like a good parent"? This lady could have gotten in so much trouble if she just dropped her kid off and said, "Yeah, I'm good, you can watch it, bye, see you later." Like, that really baffles me. You're just gonna leave your 5-year-old with some stranger at a pool? You don't know them. Anything could happen to them. Why would you do that? Thankfully, this kid was not abandoned by their parent and left at the pool to do whatever they want as a 5-year-old. And hopefully that Karen learned a lesson that you can't just drop your kids off and expect anybody to watch them. Because if anybody's watching your kid, then anything could happen to them, and that would be tragic if something terrible happened. Just imagine if their kid got lost or somehow left the pool. We would then have a situation where there is a lost kid wandering around and nobody can account for where this kid's at. And you can bet that parent would be in so much trouble. They would have absolutely no excuse. There would be such easy evidence to suggest that they abandoned their kid and they left them alone with some stranger who, by the way, is not obligated to watch that kid in the slightest. It doesn't matter that they're a lifeguard. That does not make them obligated to watch your kid as some kind of babysitting service. That's very unfair and very disrespectful to the entire pool service in general. Not to mention the fact that there was only one lifeguard on duty. How on earth is that lifeguard supposed to babysit that one kid as well as make sure everybody else is still alive at the pool? Overall, thankfully, this Karen did not get their way. They had to go home with their kid, and hopefully they never come back and try that again. My boyfriend doesn't want to get married, and this might spell the end of our relationship. My boyfriend and I have been together for 4 years, and we live together. It all started when we recently recently started discussing marriage. He does not believe in marriage. He thinks it's an outdated tradition, and in our country, honestly, you have pretty much the same rights being just common law, which we are. I, on the other hand, always saw myself getting married. I told him I wasn't sure I could be happy never being married. This led to us talking about other problems in our relationship. He said that he would do it, but he felt like it would just be another compromise for him to make. I recently bought a condo, and he said he felt like I didn't really consider my options when buying it, especially whether he wanted to live there. I said that I didn't feel like he was supporting me when I was going through the process. I think he would have wanted me to wait for us to eventually buy something together, and I said we still can, but I partly did feel like this was a step to take only after marriage. He also said that he feels like when we travel, we only do the activities that I wanted to do, and I always chose what to eat for dinner. Honestly, both of these things are true. The dinners I thought he didn't mind, because I'm the one that typically keeps track of what we've already gotten in terms of shopping and other food, etc. Also, I'm trying to recover from an eating disorder, and he knows this. Nobody else in my life knows. But honestly, I do see his side, and I know I can be selfish. My family, my mother and my sisters, think I should dump him because I told them he didn't want to get married. They also think he is not patient or supportive of me enough in general. For example, they also don't like that he's not supportive of me when buying a condo. And I agree, he is not a patient person, and this is something I dislike about him. I am an indecisive person, and he gets annoyed. For example, if we're at the supermarket, I take a long time to decide what dessert to get for an event. He feels like these things do not matter in the long run. Again, I think he has a point, but I also think he could be more patient. One time we were staying with my family, and I was going to exercise with my sisters, and he said, "So what am I gonna do?" He sounded rather annoyed too when he asked this. This is also why my mom doesn't like him. And we were going to go kayaking, and I was putting on my sunblock, and he just left me. But he ended up picking me back up later, but he left me in the first place. So strangers of the internet, what do you think? Can we make this work? And should I tell him what my family thinks? I may have presented a lot of negatives here, but I do love him and genuinely feel like he gets me in a way that nobody else does. He is the only person in the world that I felt comfortable enough to talk about my eating disorder with. Our families are very religious, and we both are not really that religious. We are both doing PhD studies right now, and because of this, we relate to each other really well. Overall, I'm not sure what to do and could really use some advice. I don't think you should give up on a good thing. I think obviously in any relationship, there's going to be pros and cons to both people. But just from what's being described, like the cons are not that bad. Okay, so he's impatient. Big deal. Maybe he feels a little left out in the decision-making process, but I mean, overall, it sounds like he's not a bad guy. He just needs to be a little bit more patient. And fun thing about that is you can kind of work on that. It would be way different if he was manipulative or abusive or angry or would yell or would have some kind of drinking problem. I feel like you have a good catch. You obviously get each other, you love each other, and you trust him enough to share the most personal parts of you. So I say go for it. Stick it out and see if you can make this work. And who knows, he very well could come around and decide that marriage would be the right thing to do. You just got to work with him. So in my opinion, don't give up. This could very well work out to be something that's a lot better than what you think. My boyfriend ruined my birthday party, and now I don't know if I should break up with him or not. My boyfriend and I have only been dating for about 4 months. He's a great guy, super loving, and super caring with me. Along the course of our relationship, I've noticed a few red flags, but not big enough to break up with him over. I do feel like I hit the final straw this past weekend when he ruined me and my friend's birthday party. My friend and I decided to throw a celebration collaboration birthday party since our birthdays are 2 days apart. My boyfriend has a bit of a drinking problem. He doesn't really know how to control himself and acts incredibly aggressive and violent when he does get a little wasted. At the party, my boyfriend and my friend somehow got into a fight, and my friend's family stepped in and pulled them apart. My boyfriend made an entire scene, and I was crying because I didn't understand why they were fighting on such a special occasion. They kicked my boyfriend out of the party, and I had to leave my own party to take care of him. I was extremely embarrassed and disappointed in his behavior. He did apologize to me and to my friend the following day, but I can't seem to get it out of my mind with how he acted. He made me feel very unsafe and uncared for, and now I don't know what to do. This isn't the first time he's picked a fight with someone while he's intoxicated, and I don't think it's okay. What should I do? This is a very telling sign of what's to come if his drinking problem doesn't get under control. In my opinion, I don't think it's good to just let this slide and to allow this kind of behavior to just happen. Like, this could have been bad. Something violent could have happened. Somebody could have gotten hurt. Someone could have gone to jail. This is really scary. And the fact that this has already come up 4 months into a relationship is a pretty telling sign that this relationship might not be the best thing for her. Like, if you look at the big picture, it's really hard to see a long-term successful relationship with someone who has a serious drinking problem. I think this lady deserves so much better than this, and I think she's gonna find someone who cares for her and has a lot more control and will not get wasted like this guy. My depressed boyfriend is not treating me nice, and I don't know what to do about it. My boyfriend of 3 years is currently going through a depressive episode. This happens every spring and summer. The past month, he has gradually become more closed in, angry, antisocial, and less affectionate. He doesn't want to do anything but stare at his phone all day. This has happened a few times before, and it has previously lasted for 1 to 2 weeks. This time, however, it's gradually gotten worse, and it has lasted about a month now. I absolutely do not blame him for feeling this way, and my biggest issue with all of this is that, of course, I hate seeing him in this pain. However, when he is experiencing these episodes where he is very depressed, I feel like he's not treating me very nice. I can understand that to an extent. Maybe he just doesn't have any energy left over to be the perfect boyfriend when he's depressed. However, he barely notices my existence anymore. He doesn't touch me at all and seems repulsed by me. He doesn't initiate any conversations, and he just answers me with short answers while looking at his phone. Half the time, he just ignores me. I don't know if it's on purpose or if it's because he's distracted by the phone. The only things he takes initiative to say are negative things about me, like that I haven't done the dishes right after I just finished cleaning the whole house while he was browsing social media or something, or calling me clingy and annoying when I try to cuddle with him or give him a hug once in a while. Sometimes he becomes himself again, maybe once a week, and he is a sweet and warm boyfriend, and it's the guy that I fell in love with just coming back to me. But a few hours later, he will go back to ignoring me again. I go around constantly worrying about him and feeling sad and hurt because he doesn't seem to take any interest in me anymore. I guess my question is, how do I handle this situation? How can I make him feel better? I have asked him, and he either just laughs in my face, denies the whole thing, or says there's nothing I can do. Can I expect him to give me a little bit more attention, like him starting a conversation with me or giving me a hug or a small compliment? Literally anything. Or should I just accept the situation and wait it out? I really love him, and we overall have an amazing, healthy relationship outside of these small periods that occur every 1 to 2 years. What do I do? This is a tricky one because mental health can affect pretty much everybody involved. So I totally understand where this lady's coming from, where she doesn't know how to help her boyfriend. Your best bet might be to just talk to him when he's not feeling so depressed. Maybe he'll be a new person and he might understand where you're coming from. It sounds like you really care for him and you're really there for him. And from the sounds of it, he also really cares for you as well. I think just being patient and trying to do everything you can to show love and support will really go a long way. An entitled Karen demands her university certificate for a career that she never finished. This Karen is one of my great aunts. We'll call her Sarah. About 15 to 20 years ago, Sarah was living alone in Canada. She was already divorced from her husband and decided that she wanted to study a postgraduate course. One of the requirements for this course was, of course, her university certificate. She studied at a university in her country of origin, which is also my family's country of origin, but she claimed that she never did the paperwork to obtain it. She called the university and explained the situation, to which they responded that the process had to be done physically by her or another person. Since Sarah was living in another country, she thought about my mom, as she lived near the university, and she called her and asked her as nicely as possible if she could do this favor for her. My mom, who at the time adored Sarah and was excited that she wanted to continue her studies, accepted this and said that she would help. The next weekend rolls around and my mom went to the university and asked for the information. They told her where she should start the process, and when she arrives, a nice woman attended for her. She asked for Sarah's personal information and searches the database, but with no result. My mother thinks this is weird and that it could be a mistake. Sarah did have 3 different names, so they tried every different possibility and still no result. The nice woman then told her that maybe they could check the physical archive that's under the university, and my mother gladly accepted. We're talking about a building with several floors and tons of files, since this is where pretty much everything gets stored. They spent hours trying to find them, but still with no results. The nice lady that was helping my mom then explains that maybe there were some mistakes on Sarah's papers. It would be extremely rare, but possible. But if Sarah sends all the information that would prove she indeed graduated, a new certificate could be done. My mom thanked this lady for helping her and then calls Sarah. By this point, my mom's patience had whittled down to nothing, and she was very upset with Sarah for making her go on this wild goose chase just to get her certificate. So she called her up and said it looks like they couldn't find it, and then just hung up, which I don't blame her, to be honest. Months later, my mother went to visit Sarah's sister, and that's when the story completely comes out. Sarah's sister looked at my mom and says, "What do you mean? She never finished college." Absolutely crazy story. This Karen decided to try and pull a fast one and manipulate pretty much everyone around her to look for something that was never even there. I think because it had been so many years, she probably thought that, hey, maybe they can just kind kind of get some kind of certificate for me, and I won't actually have to go to school and finish things up. I mean, how ridiculous. If I was the mom in that situation, I also probably would have been very upset with this aunt, and I would have had some very choice words for them. Seems like a really weird manipulation tactic and completely uncalled for. So next time you go looking for something that is somebody else's, make sure that they actually did it, otherwise you'll be searching for nothing. Should I be concerned that my significant other has not shown any signs of grieving after we lost our child? My significant other and I have been dating off and on for about 4 years. As of last year, we made the decision to commit fully and grow together as a family. We're talking marriage, kids, the works. I found out in March that I was pregnant after about 5 months of trying and got more excited than I've ever been in my entire life. I was always team no kids, but after the recent loss of my mother about a year ago, my world flipped completely upside down, and I've since changed my mind. As of 4 days ago, at my ultrasound appointment, I was told my baby was not growing properly and my body was likely rejecting the pregnancy. I declined some serious medical options and decided to let it happen naturally. The day we found out, I cried for hours on end. I called out sick for 2 days from work in addition to the weekend. I've been depressed most of the weekend, lying in bed and crying. My significant other has been really helpful, but they haven't cried once. It's not that he doesn't cry or show emotions. I've seen him cry over the recent death of his dog, and I've watched him as he quit his job over it as well. He spent days depressed after that happened, but now I'm losing our unborn child and he's showing no emotion. I don't know if it's because he doesn't feel as connected to the baby as I did, or if he's still processing the loss of his pet, which happened just 2 weeks ago. But I'm worried about his lack of communication around any feelings about this. It just feels so strange that I'm still mourning and he's already gone back to playing video games like nothing happened. I'm not sure how to bring it up or even how to ask. Am I just overthinking? I don't want to make excuses for him either, and I'm wondering if men are just less attached at the beginning of a pregnancy since they're not the ones carrying the child. How do I approach this situation? Honestly, grief does not follow a specific pattern. Him not crying at the beginning of this or him not showing any kind of outward emotions about it doesn't necessarily mean that he's not mourning. Sometimes people take some time to really connect and understand what's happening. People can grieve things that are happening in their own ways. And it very well could be the case that while on the outside he's stoic and he's not really showing any kind of emotion one way or the other, but on the inside he might be just destroyed and absolutely distraught. It's hard to tell. I think overall some healthy communication could really probably clear all of this up, and I think it might be for the best so you don't feel like there's some kind of one-sided grieving going on here. Either way, I'm so sorry for your loss and I hope things get better for you. Today I messed up by falling for an incredibly obvious scam. This is basically a warning for everyone out there. Today I decided to check my email and saw that I apparently had an order renewed for an antivirus service that would cost me dearly. So I called the number on it to try and figure out what was going on. Through a complicated series of events that involved them managing to remotely control my computer, they somehow dumped $1,000 in my bank account and convinced me to get a gift card to put some of the money on it and give it to them. I am now at roughly $100 in my account thanks to these scammers. There were so many red flags throughout this entire thing, and I miss all of them because they managed to put me in a panic. They acted friendly and cordial like they wanted to help me, but they didn't. They told me I couldn't contact my bank because they'd seized my account. They convinced me not to tell anyone. They made me feel scared and distraught, all because I fell for an email that had a typo in the address they provided, which I only noticed when I took a closer look. That was what led me to discover this whole scam. The fact that they needed to use something called TeamViewer on my computer should have been a massive red flag, as well as them acting like I didn't know how to use a computer and guiding me through it step by step. I feel like such an idiot for the whole thing. Now I gotta wait at least 2 weeks before I can get my next paycheck deposited. To everyone else reading this, please, if you see an email that says you've got some kind of renewal on an antivirus product, check it thoroughly. From what snooping around I could do through my bank and the actual antivirus company, these types of scams are very common, more than you would think, so you have to be careful. That's a tragic story because I've seen that quite a bit from people where they try and get some kind of solution for their antivirus software, and then they realize that this is not antivirus software that they ordered, and then it's too late because they've already given up all this money. Here's the thing, if any company says, hey, you have to pay us in gift cards, it is a 100% scam. No legitimate company would have you pay them anything in gift cards. That's a scam. 100% you can just know right off the bat. And it is absolutely disgusting that these scammers will use these panic tactics just to try and get under your skin and prevent you from doing anything for yourself. Like they try and make it look like the whole world is ending and you better do this right now or nothing's gonna fix it. It's disgusting tactics and they should be ashamed of themselves. If I was in this person's shoes and I had just fallen for a scam and I had somehow sent hundreds of dollars to these scammers through the form of gift cards, I would immediately go to my bank and dispute all of those claims. He might be eligible for a full reimbursement. Like, you never know. It's better to say something and say, hey, I fell for an obvious scam, and to at least try than to not do anything, and then you're stuck with all this money you've lost. So the moral of this story is you better be careful with what emails you check, because you never know what kind of scammer is waiting around the corner to try and take your money, one gift card at a time. My parents decided to cancel my 14th birthday party to better accommodate my spoiled younger brother. This happened when I was 14 years old, so several years ago at this point. I have a brother that's about 6 years younger than me, and he was extra coddled by my parents for having been diagnosed with high-functioning autism when he was 4. But other than that, he seems very normal, just unbelievably spoiled. And he used that to get his way a lot. And by a lot, I mean nearly all the time. Anything I had, he also had to have it. So that meant I'd have doubles of almost everything that wasn't shared items. And anything he had that I didn't, he would rub it in my face any way he could. When I was 11, I begged my parents for a 3DS for my 12th birthday. I got one, but then was told to lend it to my brother whenever he wanted it, or else it'd be taken away, which was honestly a lot. When my aunt found out after seeing my parents forcibly take my 3DS out of my hands to give it to my brother on one of her visits, she let loose on them for such blatant favoritism. They returned my 3DS immediately, then blamed me for the situation after my aunt left, but they didn't make me give it to my brother again. Instead, my parents went out a few days later and bought another 3DS as a surprise gift for my brother. On several of mine and other people's birthdays, my brother made a huge fuss because the party wasn't all about him, even going as far as to outright state that he was upset because he wasn't getting any gifts or getting to blow out the candles on the cake. My parents learned the hard way that they couldn't enable my brother the way that they would have liked to at those parties, and were actually kicked out of a few for trying to enable some kind of toxic behavior. And because of that, other kids at his school stopped inviting him to birthday parties altogether. For me, my birthdays were some of the only days I had, especially since it was one of those days where it got to be about me, because otherwise my parents forced my life to revolve around my little brother. And the year prior to when this story took place, my parents ended up paying more attention to him the entire time of my 13th birthday, and even asked me if I'd let my brother blow out my candles for me because he was upset and pouting. I refused that because I wanted to blow out my own candles because it was my birthday. They called me a spoiled brat at first, till my aunt intervened once again and chastised them for their favoritism yet again. She stated how much she had noticed how my brother gets nearly everything between the two of us just because he's autistic. My parents got no support from anyone else other than my brother, who was still crying because he wasn't going to get to blow the candles out. And because he didn't get his way, he tried to outright spit on my cake out of spite. But my awesome aunt thankfully blocked him before he got the chance, then scolded him till he ran to his mom in tears. My parents took a lot of heat from the other adults there, and then promised to never ask to let my brother blow out my candles on my birthday ever again. But they pretty much just went through the motions for the rest of the party. My aunt pretty much took over coordinating everything from that point forward. The following year, a couple of weeks before my birthday, my parents sat me down and told me they were still going to give me gifts and a small cake, but my birthday party was effectively canceled to avoid my brother having another meltdown. I told them I couldn't believe they were doing this to me, and they just seemed to shrug it off without a care. So at school over the next week, I told my friends, my teachers, and even my school counselor. All of them were appalled by my parents' lack of consideration or empathy. The vice principal even found out and consoled me, and all of this got back to my parents through social media. My parents ended up grounding and gaslighting me for telling so many people, but that didn't stop me from still telling everyone at school that I was grounded for just being upset that my birthday was canceled for no good reason. I guess that made it a lot worse because several of my parents' own friends, along with parents to other kids in my school, called them up or sent them a message over social media basically saying, "What is wrong with you?" And suddenly, just like that, I was ungrounded. I didn't get an apology either. My dad just walked into my room with his arms crossed, told me my grounding was over early, and then walked out. That was it. I thought my party was still canceled because nobody said anything about it. And my brother thought it was hilarious and rubbed it in my face that I wasn't going to get to celebrate my own birthday. But by the end of the 2 weeks, my parents held a surprise birthday party for me at my favorite restaurant, and then started claiming that this was their intent all along, even though I knew it wasn't. From what I'd seen, everyone was incredibly unhappy with them for what they did, and it showed with any interactions family members had with my parents. So they ended up doing the surprise party to try and save what little reputation they had left. But I'm pretty sure they had to pay through the nose that day just to accommodate me. I got dinner with all my friends at my favorite restaurant that had a small arcade, and even got the newest PlayStation system, something I've been looking forward to for a long time. time. I could tell it was all pretty much planned and bought last minute because my dad had a look about him that my aunt comically described as looking like a moth had flown out of his wallet. My brother, of course, made a huge fuss that I got that surprise party. But with so many of my friends and their parents there, my mom and dad finally put their foot down on my brother to stop his tantrum when he wanted to push my cake off the table. My brother ended up getting a timeout for the first time since he was a toddler, and my mom had to stay with him to make sure he didn't do anything crazy. And he did try several times to run to the cake or the stack of presents. Who knows what he would have done were it not for the fact that at least one adult was always on guard. Even my dad stood guard to keep him away. My mom ended up having to remove my brother and herself from the party entirely and took my little brother to another restaurant so he could have fun in their play area. And I heard later she spent at least an hour trying to get him to come out of the play place tube structure, and he only did so because he had to use the bathroom, then tried to run right back in it when he was done. My parents never tried to cancel my birthday again while I still lived with them, though they never again tried as hard or spent as much. For the remaining 4 years I was under their roof, my birthday parties consisted of a local pizza parlor, a cake without even a name written on it, and never again anything as expensive as a new gaming system. I don't mean to sound spoiled, but I was a bit disappointed I never got a cake with my name on it ever again. My aunt called my parents out on it each year, and each year they claimed they just forgot to get the cake decorated. I'm pretty sure that the reason my name was never written on another cake was because my brother always refused to eat pieces of the cake that had writing of someone else's name on it at a party, and they couldn't put his name on any of the cakes as it would have looked really bad for them. But the fact that I still got a day that was just about me and not about my brother was fantastic in my book, especially because just about everything else revolved around him. During each of the remaining birthday parties while still living at home, my brother made a fuss, and my mom took him somewhere to try and calm him down. I was still required to share my new PlayStation system with my brother, but it was mine, and I took it with me when I moved out when I was 18. My little brother didn't like that, and had a huge fit till my parents went out and bought another PlayStation just for him. When I moved out, they finally had to deal with how they'd raised my brother so spoiled because I wasn't there to help them when he was acting like that. On his most recent 14th birthday, he went absolutely crazy, all because he didn't get the newest PlayStation system. He is now currently grounded for I don't know how long after causing hundreds or maybe even thousands of collateral damage during his rampage. He picked up a chair and started destroying anything that was in front of him, and my parents just looked mentally checked out when I saw them last. My aunt also told me that they wish that they could just send my little brother to military or boarding school in the future because they can't handle the monster that they've created. But there's no way they could afford that. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't find that ironically funny. Boy, have I met kids like this where they are so spoiled, so rotten, so absolutely just nasty that anything and everything that you give them is never good enough. And they're always super jealous of everyone around them. I feel so bad for this older brother, but it looks like it all worked out for him in the end. And what kind of terrible parents are they for grounding their kid after they told everybody that their birthday was canceled because of their spoiled brother? Super glad that that guy was able to figure things out, and it's a nice little bit of karma that the parents are able to see that they raised a monster. An entitled Karen tried to stop me from doing my job, so I ended up having to shut her down. I was working for a big lawn care company spraying outside of a customer's home. It was Halloween day at about 12:30 in the afternoon. I pull up to a customer house and go knock on the door. Nobody answers, so I start back towards my truck. As I'm walking back, I notice a minivan slowly drive by the truck and then speed off suddenly. It pulls into a driveway a few houses down, and as I'm getting ready to start working on this customer's property, I see her, an angry Karen in the wild. She speed walks towards me with an "I want to speak to your manager" look burning in her eyes. I roll my eyes and embrace for what's going to happen. Here we go. I put down my equipment and I approach her. I tell her in a very customer service type voice, "Hello ma'am, can I help you?" The Karen says in a snarky voice, "Yes, I know I'm not the customer, but do you know what today is?" I respond by saying, "Yes ma'am, I do." Karen then responds with an even bigger attitude. "Well, I don't think you should be coming over here and spraying pesticides all over the place. You should just come back tomorrow." Now, I probably could have been a little bit nicer, but she wasn't a customer of ours and it wasn't her business. Plus her condescending "I know better than you" attitude just rubbed me the wrong way. So I said in a 100% professional and respectful, but with a slightly sarcasm voice, "Well ma'am, first of all, if you look over there," I point to the little yellow sign I put up 10 feet away from us. I put a sign right there saying there were pesticides being used. Second off, I'm not spraying all over the place. I'm just doing a small spray around the foundation of the house. I'll even skip the steps to make you feel better. And third of all, this stuff I'm spraying will be dry in half an hour or so, at which point, unless your child is licking the foundation of the house, there's nothing to worry about. I paused for a second to let that sink in, and then I continued. Now, if there are any other questions, I'll be happy to answer them for you. She stared daggers at me with the "I went to speak to your manager" look on her face as I stood there with a happy little smile. I took in her angered look for a moment before telling her I needed to get back to work and to have a nice day in the best customer service voice I could possibly muster. She turned and stomped away, realizing I wasn't going to give her any more of my time. I called my supervisor to give him a heads up just in case she called in. I told him the whole story word for word, and he laughed hysterically, accusing me of having way too much fun doing that. And he was right. I love stories like this, especially from a Karen who just decided, hey, guess what? I want this guy to stop spraying pesticides. I guess maybe she had some irrational worry that this being Halloween was going to cause these pesticides to get kids sick. But like, who just goes up to someone's random house and decide, you, right there, stop doing your job because I say so? It was literally the middle of the day and nobody was there. And the guy's right. The stuff he's putting on that house would have dried almost instantly. And there's literally a sign that says, hey, don't step on the lawn or go near the property because there's pesticide. And yeah, pesticide is dangerous, but there's warnings for a reason. So it's always wonderful to see a Karen get shut down, especially when she's not minding her own business and trying to get up in somebody else's business, especially when they're on the job. I lied to my wife multiple times, and I don't know if she can forgive me. I recently lied to my wife of 2.5 years about not telling people she was pregnant. The backstory here is important. We have had issues with pregnancy, and last year had to have an emergency procedure where our baby was not able to live due to a very rare medical condition that occurred in 23 weeks. It has severely affected her and caused depression. I always tried to be there for her, but never felt like I was able to support her. We decided to try again, and she is currently pregnant at 16 weeks. We found out at the 12-week ultrasound that there may be issues with this baby, which was hard for the both of us. At the latest ultrasound, we got good news with a clean bill of health. It was scary going into this, but obviously was a great outcome. The night before I went to a soccer game and later found out that she wanted me to stay home, given how scared she was about the doctor's appointment the next morning. I assumed it was okay since I asked if I could go, but I should have read the room and stayed home to comfort her. We had been through a lot with the baby, and I did not realize how scared she was until we talked afterwards, and she told me that she did not feel close to me. Throughout this, the loss of the first pregnancy has affected me, and I never really dealt with it. When I would be around her, I tried to act strong because I wanted to come off that way to her. When I would try to bring it up with her and ask how she was doing, the answers were short and did not seem like she wanted to talk. I assumed she did not want to talk to me about it and was dealing with the loss on her own. It's hard knowing I couldn't help her, but I assumed she was figuring it out herself. Here's where the lie comes in. I would talk to my family about how I was feeling and kept them updated on what was going on with the perceived health issue. One day when I was around her, my dad called asking if the ultrasound was coming up, which my wife could hear on the phone. When I hung up with my dad, she asked if he knew and I said yes. We hadn't been telling anyone due to the loss of the last child. I did not tell her I told my dad, which was the beginning. I had been talking with various family members about multiple issues going on in my life recently, from the stress of my wife being pregnant, to me hating my job, to the depression and anxiety, and this was a major one. I did not mean to intentionally hide it from her, but I should have told her that I told them. That was my first mistake, but somehow I made it worse. When we were talking, she asked who all knew, and I listed off a few people, but not all of my family members, my mom or my brother, and my best friend. I thought it would be better to control the issue and not say how many people knew. She told me she was upset and I broke her trust. It was awful and I really messed up. My second mistake wasn't much better. I'm currently on a work trip and I left my Apple Watch at home. She admitted she read my text messages, which had 2 threads with my best friend who I told and my stepmom. These are 2 people that I did not tell her about, especially after we had already gotten into a fight about this before. It became one of the worst conversations that we've ever had, where she told me that she has lost all trust in me, given the fact that I lied to her and didn't tell her the full truth. Words were said and she told me that she can't raise a child with someone who lies, which absolutely killed me. I fear our marriage is on the verge of collapsing, but I want to try and make it better. She doesn't know how to move forward, and I believe we are going to try marriage counseling. This is the worst I've ever felt, and I really screwed things up. What do I do? It seems like this guy just did everything except for talk to his wife. I don't know. I feel like you should have just been honest from the get-go and not tried to make up more lies to cover up the lie that you clearly were knee-deep in. If you had just communicated with your wife and told her what's going on, it would have been a lot better off. But trying to, quote, control the situation just seems a little overbearing. And it sounds like your wife is like the last person you're sharing these important details about your life with. I understand if you're depressed depressed or if you hate your job or if you're having some kind of stress in your marriage. But discussing that with literally everybody else except for your wife, in my opinion, is probably not the best idea. But overall, I hope this all gets worked out in some healthy way and that you guys are still able to stay as a couple and raise that child together. Today, I messed up by asking my coworker out. So yeah, I asked my coworker out in the most awkward way possible. I felt that it would be inappropriate and too pressured for her if I asked her at work, where we basically always are within earshot of other people. So my big brain decides the best course of action is to leave her a cute note on the dash of her car as I'm heading out for the day. The contents of the note were essentially me saying, "Hey, I think you're really cute and nice to be around. I'd like to take you on a date. Call me sometime if you're interested." And then I listed my number. This might have been innocent enough, I suppose, but I pulled out my shovel and decided to dig deeper by finding her number in a group text message and messaging her at nearly 11 o'clock at night because of course she wasn't going to call or text. I basically begged her to forgive me and to forget my weird mistake. I feel like such an idiot right now, and I worried about losing my job for acting like such a fool on top of the intense loneliness and isolation. I hope I can get through the rest of this week, and I hope nobody else makes the same mistake I did. Yeah, you definitely picked one of the most awkward ways to ask a coworker out. Also, you're asking a coworker out. I mean, sure, go for it if you want, but you gotta understand the implications of that. If you did end up starting to date that said coworker, you would then be seeing them every single day of your life. Like there would be no downtime. You would see them at work and then you would see them outside of work. And sure, that can work for some other people, but in my opinion, I think that would just make things really awkward. I don't know. That's just my take on it. Personally, I try not to look to dating coworkers unless I know there's a clear-cut line between work and outside of work interactions. Otherwise, things can get really muddied and it can get really awkward and weird. I really hope this guy doesn't lose his job, but hopefully this girl just kind of lets it go. But in all reality, she's probably just going to tell her friends and they're just going to laugh about this behind your back. Which, if that's going to be your punishment, it could be a lot worse, to be honest. And yeah, if I was a guy and I found out about this, I would probably laugh at it too. Next time, if you're going to ask someone out, just ask them out directly. Weird little notes on somebody's car is not really the way to do it, in my opinion. But what do you think? Leave a comment down below. What would you do if you're in this situation? Today, I messed up by ignoring a high fever and almost unaliving in my home alone. To start off, I use Celsius rather than Fahrenheit. Let me start by saying I get sick a lot, so today wasn't an unusual thing for me. I woke up with a sore throat. I felt like I was going to get sick with flu, so I sent my brother at about 1 o'clock to buy me some medicine. He did, and then my family left without me because it was my grandmother's funeral. I thought I could stay up for my upcoming midterm exam, and at 4 o'clock, my mom would come and take me to my grandmother's house. I finished studying at 2 o'clock, but at that point, I was freezing. My whole body was shivering, and my throat was hurting even more. I couldn't even swallow my own saliva. Anyways, I texted my brother that I'm not going to the funeral because I was getting progressively worse. I told him that everything hurts and I wasn't able to get up. So I forced myself to get up and I got the thermometer to try and check my temperature. I measured my temperature and it was 36.7 degrees Celsius. So I didn't really give it any thought. I tried to waste time on TikTok, but I was feeling worse by the minute. At 6 p.m., I was crying my eyes out, contemplating whether I should call my mom or not. I remeasured my temperature and it was 37.1 degrees Celsius. And then 5 minutes later, it was 38 degrees Celsius. So I took a pill for the fever and thought nothing of it. And this is basically where I messed up, because your temperature going from 37 to 38 in 5 minutes is a major red flag. That's when everything started to go downhill. My left hand was feeling weird. It felt stiff. I thought that it's because I was sleeping on it, but then both of my arms and legs started to hurt while also cramping up until I couldn't even move my fingers anymore. I tried to get my hand to soften up, even just a little, but it didn't work. Then my whole face started twitching badly. My mouth was basically stuck and I couldn't even move my tongue. At this point, I was hyperventilating. I was taking short, fast breaths because I felt like I couldn't breathe. I tried to scream, but my whole mouth was stuck. I called my brother and tried to tell him to come home, but it was inaudible. I threw myself on the floor and started shaking pretty badly. I was having a panic attack. I tried to call an ambulance, but my phone fell far away from me and I couldn't reach it. At this point, this had been happening for about an hour and I was in extreme pain and agony. I felt like these were my last moments. I thought I'd never see my parents again and that this was it. I don't know how, but I felt my body beginning to relax just a little bit. I tried to balance my breathing and it kind of worked. I was still shaking and felt like garbage, but I reached my phone and was able to call an ambulance when my mom came home. She had no idea about what was happening to me, but she later said she had a feeling and felt like she should come come home and check on me. She saw me on the floor and came rushing to me, asking what had happened. I told her to get a doctor, and she did. She helped me get back in bed and measured my temperature. I had a fever of 40 degrees Celsius, which is not a good sign. The doctor came in less than 2 minutes later and examined me. He said that what happened to me was because of the high fever, and because I took that pill about an hour ago, I basically saved my own life, because the pill basically went into effect and stopped my body from basically unaliving on the floor. My doctor ended up injecting me with some medicine, and when I felt better, we went to the hospital. This was the first time in my life that I had felt this desperate and wished this experience upon no one else. This could have been bad, but thankfully I came out with my life. That is a very scary story. Having a health crisis like that where you are basically helpless on the ground and no one is there to help you out or to try and save you is very, very scary. I can only imagine how desperate and terrified they felt, especially since they couldn't reach their phone or have any kind of communication with anybody. How terrifying is that? Thankfully, they took that pill and it absolutely saved their life. It prevented their body from unaliving. I can't imagine being in that situation, but I think the moral of the story is, if you're feeling sick, see a doctor and take care of yourself, because you never know what could happen. My entitled mother wants my future home for herself so I can inherit it later in life. First, let's have some backstory. I've been homeless for a long time after being kicked out 3 times. The first time was when I was kicked out of my father's home when I was around 16. The second one was from my uncle's home after he became mentally ill and very unstable. And the third one, again, was from my father's home after we all thought he had changed, which we were wrong. And this was around 3 years ago when I was 24 or 25 years old. This is relevant as my parents were divorced since I was a kid because of my father's abusive behavior, and it comes into play later on. The second important background information is that my family has never had a lot of money, and any money that we did have was wasted on drinking, doing illegal activities, and illegal substances, if you know what I mean, all mostly done, if not exclusively, by my father, all while me and my brother were left unattended, starving, and so on. But my grandparents, both of them, but in this case my father's parents, have tons of money and properties. If I had to count them, I would say they have about 10 flats that they have because of a business that they own that allowed them to buy all of these properties. The thing is, my father and uncle had many fights with my grandparents, as they tell everybody that they were really abusive to them when they were young and so on. Now, I'd believe this, but I'm more inclined to think otherwise, as even after ending up in court multiple times over assaults, my grandparents allowed them and us to live in 2 of their properties. And I'd say those were almost luxury flats if they hadn't made them into big trash containers, sometimes literally using a room as a trash storage. Now on to recent events. So after going homeless, my mom took my brother and I into her flat for a time, although I was forced to find another place or go to the local shelter whenever her boyfriend wanted time with her, as she really didn't care if I had a place to sleep. The only thing that mattered to her was that she was able to spend some personal time with her boyfriend, if you know what I mean, and she didn't want me there for that. On perspective, this would have been a good start to an entitled parent story, but I would say it's just a bad parent story, so I'll leave it at that. And don't get me wrong, she was never a bad mom, or not as bad as my father at least, but she kept her distance, as being a mom simply wasn't the life she wanted. So after that, I decided to make contact with my grandparents again, although everyone else disagreed, but I had to take the chance. It had been around 15 years since we were forbidden from contacting them, as all my family spoke of them as the devil or even worse. And again, they're not saints, but my goodness are they lifesavers. They rejoiced after I came back to them, showered us with cash for anything we needed, and found us a place to live, renting it and giving us cash every month, paying for my brother's final years at university, and for my studies as well. Still, my mom didn't like most of it, although I choose to believe she was at least relieved she wasn't going to be forced to take care of us from there on. It got to a point where they bought my brother a flat too, not only so we had a permanent home, but also so he could have some property, as my father's home was supposed to be one day ours. I should mention here too that all these years, they still gave both my father and uncle a whole salary to each of them, so they knew we could have had everything we needed. Sadly for them, they were wrong about that. So now onto the main situation. It started as just another night for me, where I wish I could stop feeling like things could go back to square one at any moment. So I started thinking that, hey, it's been a while since I was told that I was going to be getting my own flat, just so we could rent it and have our own money. So I came to the conclusion that maybe I could help speed up the process and look for one myself. And so that's what I started to do. The next morning, my grandparents thanked me profusely for helping with it and taking the initiative. So we start visiting some candidates, some of which I go to with my mom too on separate visits. Somehow that starts a whole month of my mom telling me things such as, I don't like that
that place for you. That flat is on a bad side of the city. Nobody would ever rent it.
And stuff like,
I know which places you'd like better than you. I know what you like.
At first, and to be fair, those seem like pretty innocent claims, but then they started becoming something else. You see, my mom has always lived in a rented house, and she's the only one of her family to not have a home of her own. Her two brothers, her sister, and her parents all own a home of their own, so she somewhat hopes to inherit her parents' property after they pass away. That's not happening though, as one of her brothers doesn't like her one bit and would never give his part away, and she has no way to buy it from him at all. She starts giving us hints, rather requests, of living at my brother's flat. It only has 2 rooms, but my brother's in university, so there's 1 free room, right? Well, no, because obviously he'd need a place to live after he finishes university, or if anything happens, or a place to stay if he comes by. My mom starts telling us how
she'd do it for us for the money, and that we get along so well we'd never even notice she's there.
Except all of this isn't true. She sometimes buys us groceries, yeah, but we don't ask for it. She has never given us any money aside from that. My mom at that time had spoken about her perfect idea, and I gotta say, it wasn't half bad on paper, but not in practice. She said something along the lines of,
well, since you're getting a home of your own, why not, instead of renting it to some deadbeat that would destroy it and not even pay, I could rent it, but I live here, and you would live there? You'd like it. We don't have to tell anyone. You don't like this place anyways, and the money would stay home.
At first I was confused. Like, why keep it a secret? She always does this with everything. It all has to be a secret, but makes things absurdly complicated. So I tell her, no, I can't rent you my house only for you to live at my brother's house. He should be asked first. Besides, that would mean he'd have to live with me, so he would definitely have to know. She goes on to say,
well, see, this place is perfect for me. I can change this room for that one. The living room would have to be my room. I can make this and this and this other change.
And eventually I was just stunned. She started telling me all the changes that she had been clearly thinking about for a long time. At least since all those months back where she started telling us how a good idea it would be for her to live here. I say to her, again, no, I don't think my brother would like living with you, and I won't let you live here without him knowing. If you want to do shady things, you'll have to tell him and the grandparents, since they're paying for all of this. She started turning red, not of rage or perhaps just part of it, but she always fake cries when she doesn't get what she wants. She goes on to say, you would not understand. They tried to make me live in a terrible place back when they bought us a home when you weren't even born. I responded by saying, but they didn't. They changed the place, and although I think you deserve a home too for all you had to put up with, it doesn't have anything to do with this. As I said, the place they ended up buying for them was almost a luxury one. You could see the beach from it and so on. Although it was never supposed to be their own place, it was bought through the previously mentioned business that my grandparents own, and we were supposed to inherit it when my grandparents passed away. This entire exchange was really weird. I didn't fully grasp why she was acting like this all the time, so I called my brother and explained the situation. He told me she had been insisting on the topic of living with me for a while, as if we were going to be living together in his flat. But since he knows her, he also knows that she's full of garbage, and essentially agreed with me on everything that I told her. Days pass, and she seemed to start accepting how ridiculous it was to make a very convoluted plan of renting a home to live at another one and not tell anyone. So I propose we talk about it on a normal, decent terms. That is, that she rents my brother's home since he isn't here for now, and he can choose where he wants to live, since there would be free rooms at both places. My mom was visibly displeased, but accepted the terms. But then came more drama after I found a perfect place for me. After I settled on a place that would work for me, my mom went into full Karen mode, trying to convince me not to get a place at that specific location because I guess there were thugs and gangsters around there. My mom and I have this massive back and forth where she and I argue left and right about the logistics of my home. She then comes back with this brilliant idea that she could live in my house, buy it from me, so then when she passes away, I would then inherit the house from her. After a while, she became very possessive of this idea, demanding to live in the house and basically have it until she passes away. So I'm trying to make myself ready for whatever happens next and whatever harebrained scheme she comes up with, because who knows what her comments could be next. This is a crazy situation. This original poster has a terrible extended family, and I'm not talking about the grandparents parents, I'm talking about the father and the uncle and the mom. The fact that this mom wanted to take over this guy's future home and live in it and then basically own it until she passed away just so he could then inherit it is absolutely ridiculous. I don't blame him for not wanting much to do with his parents either. They sound like deadbeats and they didn't want anything to do with their kids. I mean, this lady didn't even help her kid when he was homeless. Terrible parents overall, and I really wish this original poster the best in finding some kind of solution for his home. And hopefully he doesn't give it over to his crazy mom. My boyfriend is jealous that our new cat likes me a lot more than it likes him, and I don't know what to do about this. 8 months ago, my boyfriend's cat that had been with him for 16 years tragically passed away. We both mourned intensely, and we both talked about getting a new cat when we felt the time was right. 3 months ago, we adopted a 5-month-old kitten. She's wonderful and sweet. I've been very attached to the new kitten since I took a lot of the responsibility of caring for her, from stuff like the litter box to playtime. I was the main caregiver. Because of this, I also looked up cat care and being a cat parent. There is a lot of stuff that you just gotta know that you can and can't do. My boyfriend insists on feeding dry kibble to the cat, so I got her a water fountain instead of a bowl. I play with her with a wand toy for 15 minutes as the coffee's brewing every single morning, and again throughout the day if she seems bored. I think this has bonded me to her more strongly than to him, as he only plays with her in short bursts, and I've suggested that he take over these longer playtimes that I've been doing with the cat. For 2 months, all was well. She would play with me, snuggle with him during the day, and check in on our roommate. Lately, though, she's been following me from room to room and taking her naps on my lap every chance that she gets. I know my boyfriend is missing his cat, who truly was his cat and was attached at the hip to him, and is upset that he no longer is getting that kind of attention from the kitten. I also think I made this problem a little bit worse, because when my roommate accidentally let her escape only a month ago, I was so panicked and traumatized thinking I'd never see her again, that when we did find her and we got her home, I went to check on every 30 minutes just to ease my mind and make sure that she was still there and that I had the time to pet her. I think that also had me bonded to her even more and was a little bit unnecessary on my end, but I did it anyways. But here's the problem. When he brings it up, he says that I did this on purpose, and by playing with her and giving her too much attention, I have made her my cat. His tone is pretty accusatory as well. He also says that he hates the water fountain and wants to give her a normal water bowl, and I'm against this, as it's one of the things that I really insisted on the cat having. If I try to defend myself by saying I'm just looking after the cat's best interests and taking care of her the best way I know how, he won't hear any of it. If I suggest that he take over morning playtimes, he won't hear it. I ask what I can do to help, rather than just hearing what I'm doing wrong, and he tells me to just ignore the cat so the cat can seek out other people again. First off, I don't think that will work, because if you ignore cats, they only want your attention more and may act out. Second, I don't think it's fair to punish the cat when she's done nothing wrong. Third, I didn't get a cat so I could ignore her and not play with her. I do genuinely want him to have a good relationship with the cat. I don't know what to do, and it's very difficult to communicate with him about this issue because I get defensive when he claims I've done such and such on purpose, when I'm just trying to take care of the cat the best way I know how. How do we resolve this? I would love to just give her more to him, but I don't see how that's possible without me ignoring her and therefore punishing her. What do I do? Honestly, there's not a lot you can do to really fix the problems with the cat. Your boyfriend is honestly just being really ridiculously jealous, and it's just not fair. The suggestion to try and just ignore the cat and to pretend like it doesn't exist in hopes that the cat will look for someone else to be close to is just not realistic. I totally agree with the original poster. That would just be punishing the cat for no reason. The boyfriend legitimately just needs to stop blaming his girlfriend for this cat attaching to her and make the necessary steps so that he can get attached to the cat and vice versa. Like, it's time to step up and just be more involved. I understand that he's mourning the loss of his cat and he misses that tight-knit relationship that he had for 16 years, but he also needs to understand that this is a new cat. It's not going to be the same one he grew up with, and he needs to accept that it's going to have a different personality than the one he's used to. I think maybe this is the boyfriend just lashing out because he feels really depressed and really upset that this new cat hasn't liked him the way that his old cat did, but I think he's going about handling it all wrong, and he's treating his girlfriend like garbage in the process. But overall, I don't think the lady in this situation has done anything wrong, and hopefully this man can get a grip, pull it together, and understand that his girlfriend is not actively trying to take this cat away from him, because that would be insane. My girlfriend has a serious drinking problem, and I can't keep ignoring it. What should I do? I met my girlfriend when she just turned 21, so of course I understood her wanting to drink and have some fun. But now a few years later, and many conversations later, she just won't stop or slow down drinking. And while sure, she doesn't get falling over sloppy kind of wasted, but I believe she is drinking way too much and is doing it as much as 5 days a week. I say I believe she's doing this because she knows how I feel about her drinking so often, so now she's been hiding it on the weekdays from me. I believe she chugs drinks while I'm in the shower so I do not see it. A few months ago, she said she was taking a break from drinking, but I started to suspect her sneaking alcohol, so I took pictures of the liquor bottles and later found of course she's been drinking them, to which she lied to my face about it until I told her I had picture proof, and then she cried and apologized. Today I was looking for a pair of my pants, so I went to check the drawers to see if they were in the place that I had accidentally put them or something, and I find empty cans of alcohol and empty bottles of wine in multiple drawers, and some inside of a duffel bag. She even refuses to drive whenever she sees her friend or goes to a family party because she has to drink at every gathering. What do I do? I can't enable this unhealthy and destructive behavior. Last talk about it we had, I mentioned her needing help, and she completely denies having a problem and needing help. She said she would apparently slow down, but that just ended up meaning she would hide it from me. How do I help someone that doesn't want help? I love her and don't want to lose her. What should I do? There are 12-step programs that can help out with this and find some semblance of recovery from this addiction, but at the end of the day, you can't force her to do those steps. Like, she's gonna want to have to do that herself. And based on the behavior that's being described, she is literally sneaking drinks behind your back because she knows that you're gonna get on her about it. The only thing you can decide is how long you want to put up with this behavior. I think you really do love this woman, and I absolutely believe you when you say that, but if this behavior continues, this could become a very destructive force for evil in your relationship. And at the end of the day, there's only so much that you can do for somebody. So I would take a step back and look at the situation and have an honest talk with her and see where she wants to go with this. Ultimately, I hope you find the solutions that you need, and hopefully you're able to work this out. But based on what you're describing, it doesn't look promising. Today, I messed up by driving 13 hours to surprise my girlfriend, only to then find her in bed with her ex-boyfriend. All of this happened this morning, but to provide some backstory, I grew up in Kentucky and would spend summers in Minnesota with a parent. One summer, I met her and clicked instantly when we were 12 years old. We started dating at 13, but life would always take me back to Kentucky, so it has always been an off and on relationship. Skipping over all the times we enjoyed together in the past 20 years or so, we have never ended things poorly and always remained friends. In the past year and a half, my life has completely flipped as I finished a huge milestone in my career that allows me to work essentially where and when I want. I cut ties with a relationship and sold my house and ended up losing my father, who passed away because of an illness. After all of this, we start talking daily again and getting close. So I took a job call in Minnesota and we spend all of our free time together. Things were going well, and we had been talking about building a life together, with her saying that this is all she's ever wanted and that it finally makes sense for the both of us. Last month, I took a job call out of town and we continue to talk daily. I've been going on an annual family fishing trip since I was a kid that happens to be going on this weekend. We're also on this trip celebrating my aunt's 60th birthday, so I decided to take the week off and drove to Kentucky for her birthday party. I have a few days to spare between the party and the trip, so after the party, I drove 13 hours straight to Minnesota to surprise her before work. When I finally arrived completely exhausted, I walked into her bedroom and turned on the light to see her ex-boyfriend asleep next to her in his boxers and no shirt on. I then had to drive another hour and a half to a family member's house before sleeping there all day. Now I'm sitting here in Wisconsin trying to process all of this and have a 12-hour drive back to Kentucky to look forward to. I have blocked her on social media and I've lost all trust in everything that I've done with her. It feels like 20 years has just gone down the drain, and I'm still grieving this entire situation. I feel absolutely awful for this original poster. This is a terrible way to find out that she's been going behind your back, but boy, aren't you glad that you found out. Imagine still talking to her and trying to have some relationship, and she's still doing this without you knowing. It sucks that you drove 13 hours to find out this way, but at least now you know that she is not loyal, and you can do so much better than this. It is absolutely disgusting that she threw away 20 years of a friendship that could have become so much more, all for some ex-boyfriend and just so she could go behind his back. Absolutely disgusting situation, and my heart goes out to you. And I really hope you're able to move on from this and find someone who actually cares about you. Today I messed up by telling people that I was from Texas. I had no idea what was in store. I guess I'll begin by saying that I'm a 25-year-old female and I'm from Texas. One of my friends lives in New Jersey and she recently got married. I flew up from Texas and there was about 100 people there for the wedding. I was the only one from Texas. So during the night, I was talking to some people at the wedding and they asked me where I was from, and I mentioned that I'm from Texas. Their moods changed with me almost right away. Some of the men and women both started talking to me about guns and how Texas people are, mentioning the border and rednecks and everything else you can imagine. They also began to start acting as if they should be wary of me, just coming right at me with a bunch of stereotypes. I could not believe it. It was shocking for me to hear them and see how they were acting differently towards me after this. I'm kind of a big girl with a couple tattoos, and one of the women asked me if I'd ever been in a fight in a saloon before. I could not believe they were asking this. I clearly messed up by even mentioning the word Texas around these people. But on the other hand, I really wasn't ready for their reactions either, especially with all these stereotypes that I definitely didn't expect. That's really disappointing that they started judging this person based off of where they're from, aka Texas. I have a lot of friends from Texas and I would never go to some kind of weird stereotype to describe how they are. Like, that'd be ridiculous. That's like saying anybody from Florida has alligators, has some kind of warrant out for their arrest, and is probably on the run from the law. I mean, if I meet someone from California, I don't automatically assume that they're just some beach bum who goes surfing all day. Like, these stereotypes are just not even close to being true. And the fact that they said saloon instead of a bar cracks me up. I don't think anybody ever says the word saloon anymore. I'm pretty sure that got eliminated from the English vocabulary since, like, I don't know, the 1900s. Who gets in a fight in a saloon? Well, I don't think anybody does nowadays. Overall, it's kind of weird how people will start acting like that based on where you're from, and I'm really sorry they had to deal with that. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.